your thing hasn't popped up.
So, hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by again. We're here for our weekly live stream. As we do, for those new to the channel, we do these every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. We usually go to about 10:30. We see how the stream is going. We usually talk about a few things, but mostly it's a question and answer. You guys have any questions to do with Canadian politics, American politics? I'll do my best with world politics. You can bring those questions. We'll be sure to talk about them. As you know, we'll be talking about Bernie endorsing Biden. I know a lot of questions are going to come on that issue. We can certainly talk a lot about, the politics of Donald Trump and the stimulus checks and how those are, not, going out because he wants to ensure his name's on them. We could talk a little bit about Marilyn Gladu and other Canadian politicians joining conservative Americans and seemingly wanting to rush the return to work, even if it causes, harm to people. We could talk, of course, about the British Labour Party scandal that's sort of arisen in the last couple days, where it was basically revealed that through a series of reports and text messages that senior officials in the Labour Party back in the 2017 election, which of course was a very close election, basically did everything they could to prevent Jeremy Corbyn from winning, moving money around to uncompetitive ridings so that marginal seats, so that swing ridings, the Labour Party would be starved of cash, all sorts of things like that, they prevented Jeremy Corbyn from dealing with some of the internal scandals. So on all of these things, there's certainly a lot we can talk about with regard to the politics. We could talk about the Obama endorsement, all of these things, right? So whatever you guys feel is, interesting to talk about, we could certainly get into that ASAP.
Apparently, Bernie's stream started an hour late and it's in progress right now.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I didn't know. That's interesting. I think a lot of these things are really pushing people because they don't always know if, with the thing. I still don't feel safe saying it because sometimes we get demonetized, sometimes we don't. But I think that's causing havoc with everyone's streams and all those sorts of events. So what are people saying so far? People are still streaming in, I think.
Yeah, they're still coming in. Apparently, it's 10 o'clock right now in Australia.
It's 10 o'clock right
10
now.
in the morning. It must be 10 in the morning.
Okay.
10 tomorrow morning.
10 tomorrow morning?
Yeah. Someone asked about, Jonathan Castles asked about Marilyn Gladow's comments. What is that?
Gladu. She's a conservative MP here in Canada from Ontario. And basically she was like, it's time to get the economy back to work. There was another conservative MP yesterday who basically said something along the lines of, most of the people affected are in, long-term care facilities. They're, older folks. And so because these people can already be isolated, isn't that a sign that we're all sort of wasting everyone else's time and that it would just be easier to go back to work? And so you're seeing more and more figures on the Canadian right, specifically within the Conservative Party and also in more conservative movements that are sort of trying to say this is overblown, that the economy is more important, that the damage being done by the closures is worse than what would happen if we lost a few more people, and you're starting to see that more and more now. I don't think it's a smart move politically because within the Conservative Party there is a higher proportion of people that think this is overblown. They don't necessarily think it's a hoax, but they think it's overblown. They think that, that we're making too big of a deal of this crisis. But if you go to the general public in Canada, there is absolutely positively massive buy-in, right? There's absolutely, I wouldn't say it's universal, but would you say it's pretty darn close?
I wasn't listening to you. I don't know what you're talking about.
Like the people who have bought into dealing with this crisis, dealing with the closures, seems like most people are in. Some people are, they're obviously not happy, but most people are in, right? And so
warn me before you're gonna ask me.
She wasn't not paying attention. She was just doing such a great job reading all your wonderful and thoughtful comments and questions and all of that. So, you know, at the end of the day, the Conservative Party, at least some rogue elements within it, are starting to question the procedures, but I don't think politically that's going to go well at all, because pretty much every non-conservative voter, and I would say even a majority of conservatives, just frankly think that what we're doing is necessary here in Canada. But you are starting to see that mask slip, much like how it's mostly Republicans in the United States that are you know, sort of suggesting that this is not worth the loss of GDP or whatever metric they're using.
Okay, we have a super chat. Can you change it?
Yeah, for sure. Put it right here. Yeah.
Okay. So HS Ross with a super chat. Thank you so much for your support. And they say, I am hardcore in favor of voting for Biden for harm reduction. But why are we having the debate now? From my perspective, it would help at this point to threaten to not vote for Biden, to force him to move left.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, the reason we're having this discussion now is because the primaries, I know technically they're not over. Biden hasn't clinched. There's still this belief that maybe they're going to try to swap in Cuomo, or you never know if something happens that, you know, somebody else could have to take the job. But the fact is that because, you know, everyone else is out of the race except for Biden, he's clearly going to be the nominee, barring anything exceptional. Now people are starting to have that discussion. And I think it's also being driven by the fact that, you know, Bernie Sanders is out of the race, and Bernie Sanders has endorsed Joe Biden, and Bernie Sanders has even gone to the point, and other people have disagreed with my interpretation, but I actually stand by it, that Bernie Sanders said if you don't vote for Joe Biden, you're being irresponsible if you don't work to support Joe Biden. So all of that has sort of driven this debate within left-wing circles, within the Bernie camp. Is it time, should you vote for Joe Biden? If you're not voting for Joe Biden, does that make you a bad person or irresponsible? If you're planning to vote for Joe Biden, but you don't want, should you play that card now? Or as you note, should we move that to the future? Should we, try to withhold our nomination? Does that work though? I'm not sure. So I think the reason we're having this discussion now is because in a quick succession, Bernie dropped out. He endorsed Biden. He started calling non-Biden supporters irresponsible. And then you have Briahna Joy Gray and Kyle Kulinski and a lot of other high-profile Democrats, or not even Democrats, high-profile Bernie supporters who have come out and said that they don't agree with Bernie Sanders and his approach here. Either they cannot vote for Joe Biden or that they will not endorse Joe Biden until he makes significant concessions like, Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, wealth tax, and on and on and on. And I think my position, as you guys have seen in my videos over the last couple days, is that I respect your position, HS, to vote for somebody out of harm reduction. I respect that decision. I also respect those people who say they can't vote for Joe Biden because of Tara Reade or because of, Medicare for all is non-negotiable, a Green New Deal is non-negotiable. That's their choice. And my ultimate viewpoint is not that people who aren't voting for Biden are irresponsible, but that Joe Biden has to make a calculation on his own. Biden has to decide for himself who his platform will appeal to. And it is ultimately his responsibility as to whether or not left-wingers that aren't currently with him will come with him. Biden designs the parameter of his vision. If he wants to include those people, he can easily do it. Medicare for all will win over a majority of the Bernie people that aren't currently moving to Biden right now, the holdouts. If Biden proposed Medicare for all, most people would move over. And I know a lot of my fans in my comments on Facebook and the comment section here on YouTube said, well, I would never believe Joe Biden. But the people who watch my videos and comment on them and follow me on social media are the most online, engaged Bernie fans. The vast majority of Bernie voters are regular people that don't watch politics YouTube, and they'll believe Biden if he says it. They will, whether we like that or not. And so my view is that at this stage, my biggest concern is this tearing left-wing spaces apart. Because I don't want that. I don't want us in a situation where, Joe Biden voters are being classified as traitors to left-wing movements, or Bernie Sanders supporters that can't move to Joe Biden are being classified as Donald Trump supporters. That's not fruitful. You can disagree with Bernie's approach, but it doesn't mean that the movement, should just disappear because of this factional debate. That's my biggest fear. So if you want to vote strategically for Joe Biden, go ahead. If you don't want to vote for Biden, go ahead. You're all welcome in my spaces, and I won't fundamentally ridicule any of you to make that decision. If you're voting for Trump, frankly, some people have said I'm voting for Trump. I can't support that, and I will call you out for voting for Donald Trump. In 2016, it was bad enough, but by 2020, if you're voting for Donald Trump, I don't know what I can say to you. It's abhorrent.
Oh, okay.
No. Well, look, I'm going to be honest, right?
All right. Well, we have lots of regulars here. Comrade Internet is here. Lisa Hildebrand is here.
If you see right here, Joseph was one of the original channel members, or one of the first ones, and the channel little notification changes. So because he's been a member for 2 months, he has a little yellow one.
Yeah, I noticed.
So it starts like green and then changes colors, right? So
right. Yeah. Joseph is here. Comrade Internet. Did I already give a shout out?
Yeah.
Hey, is A's here? We haven't heard from A's in a long time. A's, if you're here, let us know. We want to say hi.
Yeah.
I think Nathan Drake is here.
Yeah, lots of regulars here. It's great to see.
No, it's great. Environmental Canadian is here.
Yeah.
Monster Ram says several members and friends have gotten their stimulus money. At least they got something because they really needed it. Is that Canadian or American?
I think with the stimulus money, they're more American.
That's American.
Because we are calling ours the CERB, the relief response benefit, basically, which isn't being classified as stimulus. Because in Canada, we don't have a universal stimulus. The way it's working is, if you qualify for employment insurance, what we call unemployment insurance, then you get that. That exists. But most people don't qualify for EI. A lot of people don't because it's harder to get. The application process is long. All of this and all of that. But we created a special benefit where if you lost your job and you had so many hours of work, you got $2,000 a month for up to 4 months. Now, as I've been noting, as we could talk about, as many on the left have noted, Trudeau's package leaves out the most vulnerable Canadians because you needed to have made $5,000 in the past year. Students who had summer jobs lined up, they hadn't started them, but they had jobs lined up, have nothing. Students who were working part-time throughout the school year, but didn't work enough hours to make $5,000 over the last 12 months, have lost their jobs and cannot get the benefit. So we don't have a universal everybody gets $1,200 payout. We have if you can demonstrate income loss, you get some benefits, right? And so I think it is good that money's going out. It is good for the economy. But as I've been seeing, it's like the United States system has some flaws based on the fact that you needed to have applied for your taxes. Low-income people, a lot of marginalized people who don't normally file taxes. You should always file your taxes, but we don't live in a perfect world, right? These people can't get access the previous year, which means a lot of very low-income people, a lot of marginal money. Now we have issues where, it could take months. Donald Trump is slowing down access to the money because he wants his name on all the checks. And of course, that's going to sound simple, but it probably requires, the checks to be redesigned or specially designed with the president's signature on it. And that's going to slow things down. Even if it only slows things down by, a few days, a few days to withhold the most vulnerable people's money for the president's vanity is unacceptable. And I've been very critical of the Canadian response, but, things haven't been slowed down in Canada because premiers or mayors or the prime minister wants to ensure his signature gets on something. I don't think that's been the reason at all. Certainly, everyone's, has an eye on the political here, but not to that level.
Well, maybe Monster Ram can let us know whether the checks they received had Trump's name on it or not.
I think that's a new thing, and I think what's in is some people have direct deposit and some people have checks. So I think that's part of it too. I don't know if the direct deposit notifications, if any were sent, have Trump's name on it. That'd be an interesting thing to.
Yeah, that was more of a question for Monster Rain.
Yeah.
Rather than you.
Oh well, okay. I'm just
right,
I'm just playing along.
Super chat. Joseph Mangano says thoughts.
No, sorry.
What'd you?
Sorry.
Don't click around on my screen when I'm reading things.
Sorry.
Okay. Thoughts on Warren's endorsement. Did she make it?
Yeah, she made it earlier today.
Okay, about the same as Obama's and Bernie's. He's not Trump. Any blue will do. Non-endorsement endorsement.
Yeah, I think to some degree, although I will say that all three of them did more than that. And as I noted in my video, Joseph, on like the Obama endorsement, Obama didn't say that because Obama tried to paint Biden as this like legendary progressive. He tried to effectively say that, Biden's pushing for this bold program, understanding that the American people can't go back to the way things were before the crisis. But I'm like, that's not Joe Biden at all. Joe Biden is very much the nothing will fundamentally change guy. He's the return to normalcy guy. And like, look, whether we like that or not, that might be a winning approach. It might be. It might get enough people to vote and win the election. Who knows? But it's not what Barack Obama was selling in that speech. Barack Obama was basically praising what Bernie Sanders had done and appropriating that work onto Joe Biden. So I think the factual endorsement you would give Joe Biden, if you were like a Democratic person that didn't really love Biden or his vision, but you had to endorse him because like it's a team sport and you do it, and you would say, hey, he's not Trump. He's not Trump. Not Trump. The guy's got some measure of experience. He's not Donald Trump. There's going to be a couple small things he'll do that'll be good for working people. Like, for instance, he's got a $15 minimum wage. I do believe that Biden would implement that. I do. I really do. It just seems like something that he would implement. And
it's not a giant leap.
Yeah,
half the big cities already have.
Yeah, that's not like so. But in the context, the national minimum wage in the United States is $7.25. Yeah. So, like, honestly, we can say that like he'll do nothing when really he'll do some things, and some of those things will matter a lot to low income people. And I think that's something to note. But I honestly didn't pay that much attention to Elizabeth Warren's endorsement. She's not that important to me right now. I haven't paid much attention to Elizabeth Warren since the Super Tuesday. And when she decided she wasn't going to endorse Bernie, I basically forgot she existed until right now. So I don't know. That's my personal perspective. Yeah.
You are so dramatic.
Well, it's true.
So
it's true. I'm just. It's true.
Okay. So we have another super chat from HS Ross. Ross with a question.
Thank you so much. Yes, I really appreciate that.
Okay. They say, so should harm reducers who want to see Biden move left just not engage in debate right now? Why did Bernie endorse so soon, and why are Chomsky and Sam Cedar arguing for voting for harm reduction now?
I mean, I think, well, Bernie makes some points. He said, I'm endorsing now because the race is far less close than last time. It's very interesting. Bernie Sanders was much stronger in this campaign than he was last time, for most of it, right? Like, Bernie was never really challenging Hillary Clinton, even though he won a bunch of states. But this time, Bernie was further behind at this point. He had won less states. There was still a mathematical path to victory. I don't think there wasn't. But it became much clearer, much earlier this time that Biden was going to win. And I think that was one of the reasons he dropped out right now. I think another factor is the current crisis we're dealing with. And I think on the one hand, my hope, and I think a lot of people's hope was, well, this will create opportunities for the left because it'll highlight just how much we need Medicare for all. If 25-30% of people lose their jobs, and pretty much all of them needed their jobs to get their health care, it's going to show people, right, that, hey, maybe having healthcare connected to jobs is a bad idea. Even in regular times, but especially right now.
Yeah, see, I don't think so. I think they're worried that Trump is going to use like populist rhetoric, and like the more you give space to that, the more people will start to listen. So arguing for harm reduction right now is a strategy to not have people hear what Trump is going to say.
I think that's part of it. I think that's definitely part of it. And I think people are probably more concerned. They're scared right now, and so they're more willing to retreat to a defensive position, right? Which is like Biden's the defensive position. And I definitely think that's part of it. And I think what Bernie noted is that while Bernie's very successful with his online campaigning, the reality is that it would take, a massive movement, not only online, but also in the physical world to flip this around. Bernie can't just win. Even if Bernie could win every single remaining state and lose, because he might not win them by big enough margins. If Bernie wins every remaining state by like 1 or 2 points, he would probably still lose because the delegates wouldn't fall the right way. And like, that's the simple truth. He needed to start blowing Biden out in pretty much every state, and maybe in the worst states, tying Biden. It wasn't going to happen. So I think that's one of the reasons Bernie dropped out now. I think people are doing it right now because now's the time that people are talking about it. Bernie just dropped out. Bernie Sanders has endorsed Biden, and he has said it's irresponsible to not work with Biden, and that's where the conversation is. I think we had this conversation later last time because Bernie, I think, stuck in until like June or something, or July, or whenever all the primaries were done, and we're just in a different place this time. So like, my view is that everyone should continue to debate their positions, right? If you're not voting for Joe Biden, no matter what, there are some people like that. Like, there's literally nothing Biden could do. Whether that's a good position or a bad position is up to you. But like, Biden could say or do anything. He could make Bernie vice president or make Nina Turner vice president and implement the entire Bernie program. You still wouldn't vote for him. Those people should still participate in the debate about the issues that matter to them, about the down ballot progressives that matter to them. The people who are on the fence should continue to debate, should continue to demand the things they need to get on board. And the people who have already clearly said, look, I'm voting for Biden, should make their policy platform things less about, what I can extract in terms of concessions from Biden because I need to be won over, because you've already said, I'm voting for the Democratic nominee out of harm reduction. You want to make the case that, hey, I'm with you, but I'm worried about how not backing Medicare for all, even though 55% of Americans, including a majority of independents now, want Medicare for all, is leaving votes on the table. I'm worried about the fact that Joe Biden's, not even half-assed, like quarter-assed approaches on so many issues will not drive turnout, will not drive infrequent young and minority and poor voters, to the polls, which is what cost Hillary Clinton. I'm worried, even though I'm voting for Biden, that no one is voting for him enthusiastically.
Okay, number one, you're not voting for Biden.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm talking hypothetically from the perspective of a person like HS, who's a...
Just wanted to remind you that we're in Canada.
Yes, and I see, yeah. Regardless, he's like, I'm voting for Biden. I've already said that, but if you want to win this, you can't just rely on people like me who are doing this out of an obligation. You need to actually win some people over. And like, maybe you do that by backing a Medicare for all plan or something. And I think no matter where you are on that, no one needs to disengage right now. No one at all. No one at all should disengage.
Okay, we have another super chat.
For sure.
The Mark O'Brien. And they say, will y'all be covering the Green candidates Dario Hunter and Howie? Are they both first name Dario?
No. Howie's Howie is the first name of the. I think so. Yeah.
Since I live in Texas, a state where Trump will win, I will be voting for one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, first thing, Mark, I look. I'm not a huge Biden booster, but I wouldn't say Texas is a 100% lock. Check your polls. I'm saying Texas is like a 95 50% Trump lock, if I'm being honest. But we don't know how bad this crisis is going to be. There's a chance. During the primary, most Democrats got blown out by Trump in Texas. But there were a good amount of polls that had both Bernie and Biden, for different reasons, obviously. Biden because he was perceived as a moderate, and I think Bernie because of his strength with Latino voters. They were both seen as having an outside chance of beating Donald Trump. So keep an eye on that. Texas is not the deep red state it once was. Texas is not Alabama or South Carolina. It's not. It's not a southern state in the same way that a lot of the other, southern states are. So that's something to keep in mind. In terms of covering the Greens, I don't know if I'll be giving too much coverage. I'll probably be mostly focusing on Donald Trump and Joe Biden and other progressives on the national scene who hold office or who are seeking to credibly hold office. And this is not a shot at the Green Party, but I don't see the presidential campaigns of the Green Party as in any way viable. I just don't. And so I don't know if there's really needs to be coverage. And the lesson the Green Party and the lesson third parties need to take in the United States from Canada, Australia, New Zealand, where third parties exist, is you got to start small. You have to find a regional base. If the Green Party wants to win a governorship before you even think about running for president, that's something I need to say. So I don't have a knowledge base of the Greens in the United States, and I think I'll be largely focusing on the main elections between the Democrats and the Republicans, and between maybe progressive independents from time to time. That's where my focus will be.
Maybe you should look up their policies.
I mean, their policies are better than the Canadian Greens, I'll tell you that. But Yeah.
Okay, Doug Grinberg says, "What do you know about Canadian eco-socialism?"
I mean, in terms of the ideology or in terms of the party, because there is the newly formed BC eco-socialists, which sort of are trying to position, that run provincially. They only run at the provincial, statewide level. They're not a federal party. Trying to sort of be we're more socialist than the NDP, the New Democratic Party, and we're more green than the Green Party. We're also more socialist than the Green Party and more green than the NDP. They basically want to be environmentally and economically and socially on the left. Odds are they'll fail. And that's not me being dismissive. It's just that 99% of all political parties in this country fail. And the Eco-Socialist Party will likely fail. And so part of me is, as somebody who doesn't live in BC, as somebody who's an active member of the NDP, and as somebody who, only has so much they can cover. And with this time, my son being in, not in daycare anymore, I only have so many hours of the day. I don't focus too much on the eco-socialists. In terms of the broader ideology, I think it definitely is playing an increased role, where within the NDP, more and more and more people are dedicating themselves to an amalgamation of socialist and ecological ideas. And that's why I think you're seeing increasingly in the NDP, the left wing of the party being much more fervently anti-pipeline than they were even 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I think that's definitely something you're seeing, the eco-socialist left. And one thing you could look at, and this is something that I don't know if I'll cover it a lot on the channel, but it's something I'm keeping my eye on, is the Green Party federally in Canada. Because the Green Party federally in Canada is small, but it's much bigger than the Green Party in the United States. They actually have seats in Parliament. Your equivalent would be if there were 3 or 4 or 5, given the size, if there were 3 or 4 or 5 Green House of Representative members that represented certain districts. That exists in Canada. They're not competitive in terms of forming government or even party status yet, but they do elect a few people. They are having, for the first time in a decade and a half, a leadership contest, and one of the candidates, Dimitri Lascaris, is running on an open eco-socialist platform. I don't know what his chances are. The party establishment, I don't think, wants him. But the fact that he's running and he's got a fairly high profile, should be very interesting for the future debates of the Green Party in Canada. And a lot of people want to see a merger of the NDP and the Green Party, but the only way it'll happen is if someone like Lascaris becomes leader of the Greens. Because with someone like Elizabeth May, the current leader, they're basically just like the Liberal Party, which is like a center-right, party of like, yuppie environmentalists, right? And it's like that's not the NDP, or it shouldn't be the NDP.
We got a new channel member.
Oh, Arlene, thank you.
Arlene Chambers.
Thank you so much, Arlene.
Just joined.
So if you look below there, you can click the join button, and it sort of works similarly to Patreon. I know a lot of people support me on Patreon, but whether you support me here or there, I'll add your name to the credits after all my regular videos, and depending on your level of support, there's other perks. So one way to support the channel is to become a member here or on Patreon. It is consistent where, with videos, some days your videos do great, sometimes they don't. So your income fluctuates. Patreon support and member support is a nice, consistent flow. Another factor that really helps is that when I make certain videos that are controversial, YouTube will demonetize them. So when people support me through super chats and through channel memberships and through Patreon, it allows me to make more of those videos. Some of my videos on Tara Reid, for instance, not all of them, which is weird, but some of them have been demonetized. But I don't want to stop covering one of the most important stories in this election just because advertisers are afraid of it. So that's something that my Patreon members and my channel members really help me do. So thank you so much, Arlene and everyone else. And if you're a channel member, you get access to special emojis, and you also get this little thing by them. It helps Briahna see you guys too, because your name gets highlighted in the comments. Yeah.
Yeah. You do realize that you are pointing to it on the screen and no one can see your screen.
Yeah, okay. But look, that was also just for me. That was for me too.
Okay. Next question. David Molina, who is also a channel member, says, "Do you believe that AOC voted no for the stimulus package as is being stated?"
I don't. I'm not sure exactly what happened. I think everyone was in a very hard position there. And sometimes all you can do is state your view and fight for what you can. Because much like here in Canada, the way legislation works is that you don't just write a bill down, read it out in the House and then in the Senate, have a quick vote, and if it passes, it goes to the president who can sign or not sign it. In normal circumstances, you basically have to go through all these committees and stuff. It's a big rigmarole, right? Unless you can get like unanimous consent, it could take weeks, if not longer, and that's probably on the quicker end, to actually get legislation through, let alone big, expensive, complex legislation. And so everyone sort of had to buckle down and say, like, are we going to support a unanimous package? And, it was very tricky. Are you really going to block an entire aid package and look like the bad guy? And you could say, well, this package gives untold amounts of money to the rich and wealthy and well-connected. But the alternative is nobody gets anything, and the society collapses. And much like here in Canada, the left here in Canada made it very clear that Justin Trudeau's package was totally insufficient. But nonetheless, we fought for what we could in it and still had to basically go for it, because the alternative was no one got anything. Businesses got nothing. Workers got nothing. No one got anything. No one got the access to the funding they needed. And so in this moment, I think you have to look at what people did within the bounds of reason. So for instance, AOC was very vocal in calling these things out. Sometimes people could say, oh, well, it doesn't really matter because she didn't stop the legislation. But sometimes that's all you can do. It's like Bernie, for instance, where Bernie, if you remember, I made a video on this where the 4 GOP senators, there was like Lindsey Graham, like Rick Scott, a couple other people were basically furious that some of the poorest people would get a few bucks more, a week or whatever, on this than they would get if they just worked their regular jobs. And Bernie was like, well, if you try to block this legislation over that, I'm going to block the entire corporate part. And so neither of them could really do any more than that, though, because to take any step against any part of the package basically removed the entire package. Now, you might say it would have been worth it to stop the corporate giveaway. But are you willing to take that political hit? I don't know. So AOC and Bernie, I think, handled that as well as you could reasonably expect in the moment. And you also have to wonder, okay, Bernie and AOC hold it up. If they hold it up, does that immediately get all the Republicans and all the other Democrats to agree to a Democratic Socialist stimulus package? I don't know if it does. I don't know. So I don't know what I would have done in that situation. It's like here in Canada, it's like if you're a left-wing MP, do you hold up the entire country's aid package just for a couple things? I don't know. I don't know what you do.
Yeah, hard question. Okay, Aaron Clemens says, never felt so let down or betrayed by Bernie as I do this week. I know he said he'd endorse the eventual candidate, but to throw in the towel so early is just awful to deal with.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are disappointed. I wouldn't go so far personally to say I feel betrayed. I think Bernie was going to endorse the nominee. As I noted in my first video, which people did not like. I think a lot of people thought I was happy Bernie did it. But all I said was, Bernie made one thing crystal clear. Maybe more than anybody else at all. Was that, we got to back the eventual nominee. We got to do it. That was Bernie's. We got to do it. There's no alternative. We got to back the nominee. And so, from my perspective, I wasn't surprised. Now, did I think Bernie could have held on for a few more weeks? Yes, I do believe so. I do believe he could have held on for a few more weeks to see if, the polling improved, to see if this crisis made people more willing to support a candidate supporting Medicare for all, or to, even if he knew he had no path, staying in longer would have maybe put pressure on Biden to adopt more progressive policy. I think that's a reasonable take. But the thing that's bothered me most from Bernie isn't even really that he dropped out or that he endorsed Biden, even if it was a bit early. It's the implication that some of the people are irresponsible for not supporting Biden. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
Okay, we have 2 super chats, and they are both from...
Well, 3 right here.
No, I know.
Oh.
Can I finish my sentence?
No.
Yeah. And they're both from HS Ross, so I'll just read them maybe together.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so first super chat says, so is the idea that arguing for harm reduction now helps Biden by consolidating his support earlier, and avowed supporters arguing that Biden should move left may be more persuasive to his campaign?
I mean, I could see that. I don't have the crystal ball answer. I'm not the harbinger here. So I don't know, let's say a year from now, or let's say a week after the election, say Biden loses or Biden wins. And it's like, well, why did Biden lose or win? And there'll be lots of reasons, but will you say that, the early consolidation allowed everyone to get on the same page, allowed him to start fundraising more early, allowed him to get more media time where he didn't have to talk about the primary and could start talking about Trump and his platform. Maybe. You could also make the case that finishing too early took pressure off Biden. He rested on his laurels. He didn't learn his lesson, and he lost to Donald Trump because he ran a boring neoliberal milquetoast platform. Both of those positions could be right. I don't know which one will be. But I don't necessarily think it's impossible for your strategy to actually play through, which is that if Biden consolidates, it might help him. Consolidating support can really matter because it gives you more efficiency, and getting some Bernie people on board could bring some talent, could bring some enthusiasm, could bring some ability to reach Bernie groups that Biden didn't have, like reaching out to Latinos and young people, that could give Biden that little bit of a push he needs to win this or to get some momentum. And I mean, maybe one argument, again, you could hypothetically make, not everyone's going to agree with this. I don't even know if I agree with it. But it's like, if you're engaging with Biden now and you're seen as doing it in good faith, does your ability to push him to the left on certain policies have a bit more sway because it's not seen as vindictive, it's not seen as attacking, it's seen as collaborative? maybe that's the case too. I don't know. But I think that's plausible. It's plausible. I don't know. I'm skeptical of that. I would believe more the consolidation from an organizational perspective more than ideology. But I think, both could happen. Both could happen.
Okay, so now I'm going to read H.S. Ross's second question. They say, P.S. I'm a Canadian permanent resident, but U.S. citizen who votes in Michigan. So this stuff in your channel are particularly relevant to me. Oh, that's cool.
H.S., thank you for that. That's great to hear your story there. No, I mean, there's a lot of people, especially in and around Southern Ontario and other border towns and border regions that sort of have that dual nation life. A lot of Canadians live and work across the border, and it's cool to see. And yeah, I think this channel is sort of good at trying to bridge that divide, if you will.
Also, some people are saying in your comments that they're having a hard time getting through to Super Chat.
Oh.
Like they're coming up with a Google error message.
That's interesting. I wonder if there's an overload right now. So let me know. I mean, it's obviously working somewhat.
Yeah. And then guys, if you can't get a Super Chat, no worries.
No.
Get your question in at the...
Yeah.
In here.
And and I know not everyone has the means, especially right now, to support. So, but the biggest thing you guys do is you come here and offer me your questions and your audience. Yeah.
And hit that like button, guys, too. So Samantha Sider, always great to have questions from Samantha.
Yes, of course.
They say, I got my $1,200 check today, so it's a good day to keep your channel growing.
Well, thank you so much, Samantha. I mean, everyone should take care of themselves and their families, but I very much appreciate your support and the support of others. It really means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, next super chat, Jill Clausen. I'm a bit behind, but maybe you don't feel betrayed by Bernie because you aren't a woman who's been sexually assaulted by someone in Congress. In my case, a senior staffer, I'm disgusted and over him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's perfectly, I think that's a reasonable take. I mean, one thing I noted a little bit in my video yesterday was how, Bernie hasn't mentioned Tara Reid. AOC didn't even say a whole lot, but if you watched my video that I put up last night, AOC was asked about Tara Reid and how no one's talking about it. Whether or not, whatever your position is, it's weird that until a couple days ago, most outlets didn't mention it at all, even though it's clearly an important story. We're talking about a former Senate staffer who was assaulted by that senator, a man who was vice president for nearly a decade, and a man who's now the presumptive Democratic nominee. And if you look at the polls aren't everything. The man is on pace to be the next president. And so why aren't we talking about this? And no one was mentioning it. Bernie did not mention it. And I did feel that was wrong. Bernie should have said something about Tara Reid. He didn't necessarily have to 100% say that, Biden has to drop out and this and that and this and that. But, Bernie saying that this is a real story we have to take seriously. It needs to be investigated. We need to hear directly from Joe Biden on this, I think would have been the least he could do. And having AOC say something is a good start, but it shouldn't fall to a young, rookie woman of color congresswoman to take the lead on this issue when the Democratic Party's broad leadership has just failed to address this. So I think that's a perfectly legitimate point. I think, coming from that perspective, I could see how somebody would feel betrayed by a lot of the progressive movement that's ignored this story.
I mean, when the chips are down, men always ignore women's issues.
Well, most of the time, yeah. Most of the time, yeah. I mean, that's fair. That's perfectly fair. Okay,
next question. Oh, no, we've got another super chat from Rich. Dr. Evelise, reopening the country too early will destroy the progress made. Agreed. With regard to COVID-19.
So one thing, just to clear, I'm a real doctor, not a medical doctor. I have a PhD. I'm not a physician. So just to clarify there, we're not going to get into that fight. It's just the only real doctors have PhDs.
Thanks, Rich. Yeah. Thanks for
that. But I'm not a medical doctor.
Just made my life real easy.
But what I will say, and the video's already gotten demonetized, so I'm going to just start talking more freely. So
how did it get demonetized?
It just happens sometimes. So yes, 100%. There's a whole bunch of reasons why opening right now is not good. One, there are epicenters, but there's no telling yet how spreads will happen. It's also going to be very difficult to open up in pockets, because even if certain states say closed, there's no strict borders necessarily between each and every state. And I know maybe you could put troopers on the highways, but it'll be really hard. And I think that opening now could risk a second wave. I think some countries have started limiting reopenings, like in East Asia. In places like China, they've started limited reopenings. In I believe Japan as well. But they have much more stringent testing. Frankly, a lot of the testing they do would be seen as maybe civil liberties violating in Canada, the US, and Western Europe. And whether maybe you support that, maybe you don't, but it'd be more controversial given our political culture here. And I just don't think now's the time. I just don't think so. I don't think it's going to work. And I mean, one of the things is could you open certain places up again? Maybe. But as long as the daycares and schools are closed, and they are across Canada, for instance, you're not going to get anything done. Nothing's going to get done because most people can't go back to work. And children in schools and in daycares will not be able to practice social distancing protocol. One, children won't do it. But even if they wanted to and had the discipline, schools are not designed to allow children and teachers and stuff to practice that. Neither, especially daycares.
Especially now when there's 38 kids in a class.
Yeah, exactly, and especially daycares where there needs to be physical contact between daycare staff and children. The younger they are, but even preschoolers, right? There's physical contact there. So we're not ready yet. We are not ready yet to reopen. Reopening right now could cause a second wave. 100%. 100%.
Okay, Dan Corbyn says, I know this is not your area of expertise, but what effect does the American conservative movement, specifically evangelical Christians, have on Canadian conservatives? A very bad one.
Yeah, the effect is very negative. I mean, I think the Canadian conservative movement does take cues from the United States. I don't think it's a coincidence that, the Canadian conservative movement was more moderate in the 1960s and 1970s, much like the Republicans were. I'm not trying to defend Richard Nixon, but Richard Nixon created the EPA, right? And so, when Reagan came in, it wasn't a coincidence that our conservatives went more conservative, right? They went more traditional neocon, neoliberal. And I don't think it's another coincidence that with the rise of the religious right, you saw the rise of the Reform Party. And you saw that movement happen on a national level. And I think you can certainly make the case that the evangelical tradition in general in Canada, I'm not an expert on this, but I did take in grad school, I took a PhD level course on North American Christianity, basically. And what we discovered was that, especially for non-official Protestant churches, aka not Anglicans, not, United Church, Presbyterians, Methodists, Baptists, that a lot of the religious communities were continental. Or not continental, but were Canadian and American. A lot of
cross-border.
Yeah, a lot of priests and pastors were American, and they came to Canada to deliver sermons. So the religious influences from the United States are undeniably deep in Canada. And many Canadians, I know this, watch the same televangelist TV, because most Canadians consume a lot of American media secularly, so religious people consume a lot of American media religiously. So whether it's Kenneth Copeland and all of these, preachers, these grifters really is what they should be called, Canadians watch them too. But I should also say that, the influence of conservatism is not necessarily unidirectional, or at least it almost wasn't. We've talked about this before a few times, but after 2012 in the US, where Obama won, Romney lost, Republicans started to get together and say, how can we win elections again? And there was a real sense that they were wrestling with the demographic realities of the United States, which is that maybe not for a while, but eventually Texas is going to become a purple state and maybe even eventually a blue state. How are we going to win elections if we're only winning the votes of white people? That's good enough for now in a good election. But what about when, white people are still the biggest group, but they're not a majority on their own? What about that? And so they actually looked to Canada. I know you remember this story, right? We talked about this.
I'm not paying attention again.
Yeah, where like the American Republicans looked to Stephen Harper.
Yes.
Where they had actually won a majority government in 2011, with a lot of rural white Christians, but also crucial support from socially conservative Chinese and South Asian Canadians in Toronto and in the Toronto suburbs, in a way that they had never really done before, or at least in a very long time. And Stephen Harper was seen as being able to build a coalition of social conservatives, regardless of religion or race, and build that into a majority government. And so there was a hope from Republicans that maybe their conservative future was to be like the Canadian Conservative Party. And then they got Trump, and then he won a massive win, and they won everything, and they forgot all about that. And then what happened in Canada is they forgot all about what won them in 2011, which was, yes, we're conservatives, yes, we're social conservatives, but we're not going to be like crazy about it, and we're not going to be like white nationalist about it, right? And they forgot all about that, and then a lot of conservatives, not all of them, but a lot of them started channeling Donald Trump here in Canada. And so I think conservatives on both sides of the border will take when they've lost, they're like, oh geez, what do we do? What are they doing in Canada? Because in Canada they just won. Let's do what they do. And the reverse happened, because in Canada conservatives had a big loss in 2015, and they started looking to Trump. And like the conservative leadership race was happening at the time that the American election happened. And the night Trump won, some of the conservative people were sending out emails to their supporters being like, Donald Trump proved he could do it. And they were like right on the Trump train. Where if Trump lost, they would have pretended he never existed, right? Like, yeah. So it's not one directional. It's not one way. No, certainly not.
Okay, and we have another super chat. John Barlich?
Barlich?
Barlich.
Yeah. Barlich. Yeah.
Sorry, John Barlich.
Let us know if that's right, John. Sorry, but if it isn't.
I feel like I've aged a lot in like a week because now I can't read the screen. Anyway, they say, hey, how do you think COVID will affect the American politics? Will it shift it right or left?
I'm not sure. I don't know. Right now, it seems like because Trump is bungling it, I don't know if it'll shift politics left, but I'm pretty confident it's not going to go a lot more right wing. Like, there's a chance Trump could win this election, and then politics will continue to move to the right. But I think if he wins, it'll be in spite of COVID, not because of it. Whereas it does seem like Medicare for All has grown in popularity since the start of COVID, and that a lot more people are starting to value the work of minimum wage workers. This is something we've seen even in Canada, where we have a higher minimum wage in the lowest minimum wage in any province in Canada is like 11 something, I think.
Although, like, if you look like historically, the response of people to, disturbances to the social order, like a war or like the Spanish flu or whatever else, doesn't typically drive people rightward. It drives them leftward.
Well, yeah, well, at least in North America, because, in Europe, there was that thing where it's like the Great Depression drove Germany and Italy to totalitarianism, but...
no, it's more complicated.
Well, it is, yeah.
Like, the First World War created the Second World
War. Well, yes,
War.
okay, you're right. You're right.
In the midst of a depression.
But you're right that out of the Great Depression and out of World War II came massive expansions in the welfare state, the New Deal. In Canada, we had something less ambitious, but
Barlich.
Yeah, okay.
Barlich.
You didn't have to super chat for a correction. We're gonna start mispronouncing all of your names. And if you want them pronounced correctly, you'll have to pony up. No. But I think,
sorry about that, John.
But I definitely think that there's a chance that, workers' rights will become more important. questioning why the most essential workers, now not all of them, because, doctors and nurses, I know nurses are not adequately compensated, but they're not minimum wage. But like doctors and nurses and stuff are working, but a lot of people, minimum wage workers in fast food places that are still open, and cleaners, and people work in like care homes here in Canada are some of the lowest paid workers, even though they have some of the most, like we're starting to care more about these people. And of course, there's no guarantee that'll hold on, but I do see opportunities for the left coming out of this. Now, the one challenge I think that's going to happen in Canada and the United States is a push for austerity after this. That because this is going to be expensive, and whether you're a believer,
push for austerity in a welfare state is not as bad as a push for austerity in a neoliberal state.
No, you're right, 100%. I think the concern is like after this, everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, we wanted to do dental care, but the last year was so expensive, we have to put all of that on hold." And I think that's gonna be a challenge.
That's only if that like drive for austerity outweighs what the public believes is like the cracks that have now shown in a chronically underfunded Medicare state. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, here in Canada, the Conservatives have taken a hit in the polls. They've been seen of handling this ineffectively. I know Trump, at least initially, was getting kudos for his handling, like most world leaders. But now I think his numbers have dipped into the negatives with regard to how he's handling the COVID crisis. And that doesn't bode well, because it would be one thing if, the economy is tanking. Trump could say, well, it's COVID related, and he might get away with it if the people thought that despite the challenges, he was doing his best. But if he's seen as bungling this, then that's going to be really bad for him. See, that's what I think will happen with Doug Ford.
You think it'll catch up to him? Yeah.
No, I don't think it'll catch up to him. I think like he's been in his public addresses, he's been so sincere. And so, like, I will never let this happen again to any one of you. And I'm going to bring manufacturing back, and we're going to be able to rely on our own selves. And, like, we'll give work to everyone. I will take care of you as long as I'm premier.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think one challenge he might face, though, is something like only 6 out of the 800 care homes in the last couple of years since he's been premier have gotten inspected. Yeah. So you might see a pushback there, because I don't know about you guys in the States, but here in Canada, per capita even, we've had way less people pass away. Way less. Like New York City, which is like a third of Canada's population, to be fair, it's a big city, has had like many, many, many more times passing than all of Canada combined. And the reality is, though, that most of the people that have been hit hard have been in like old folks' homes and in care facilities. Not only old folks, but the people living in these communities. In long-term care. And these homes are often woefully understaffed. The staff do the very best they can, but they're such great people, and they're paid such low money.
And spread between multiple homes.
And they almost have to work 4 or 5 homes, some of them, because they can't piece one job together, which means that in a context like this, the illness was being spread through the staff, and not to mention family visitors and stuff. And you add to that, like, because staff were getting sick, they were further understaffed. And just go read the horror stories of what's happening in some of these homes.
For-profit homes.
Yeah, and most of them are for profit, because people like Americans love to valorize Canada's medical system, but whether it's old folks care, long-term care, medicine, teeth, eyes, mental health, pretty much more of our healthcare seems to be uncovered than covered in Canada.
Anything that you receive outside of a hospital is not covered.
Or your GP, or your family doctor or something. But so that's what's happening here, and I could see Doug Ford taking a hit for that, because and I'm not one to praise the Liberals at all. Like I'm never praising the Ontario Liberals, but their inspections were inadequate, but they plummeted after Ford became premier. Like the Liberals were they weren't.
Yeah, but that's because the Liberals had a scandal in long-term care under McGuinty.
Yeah, you're right, 100%. Well, yeah, 100%. Right? Yeah, it goes in waves.
All right. Sheldon Hughes. Super chat Sheldon Hughes. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sheldon.
And they say, hi, Christo. Excellent analysis as always. So thank you. We appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Sheldon, for the compliment and the comment and the support. We really appreciate it. I'll keep doing my best.
Okay, so we have a question here from Kenyan Bunny, and they're a member of the channel.
Okay,
And
yes, thank you.
they say, what happens to people who didn't have a job or are homeless? Same here in the States. How are they going to get anything? So they're talking about the relief.
Yeah, okay, so in the States, now here's where like the hypothetics of your plan meet the reality. On paper, your plan does more for the homeless than the Canadian plan. Because in Canada, our relief benefits are more generous. It's $2,000 a month for 4 months, which is way more than like the $1,200. It's way better. But you needed to have been, they're making some reforms now. They haven't done nearly enough, but as of right now, at least, you needed to have already been in a job as of, I think, March 15th or something. If you were looking for work, if you got laid off the day before, you get nothing. If you hadn't have made $5,000 in the previous 12 months, let's say you were a new graduate, you just started working, you had a full-time job that would eat, but you just lost it because of this, you get nothing. If you're homeless and if you're obviously not working, but you still need support, like you're not like a stay-at-home husband or a stay-at-home wife or what have you, or a stay-at-home parent, then like you get nothing. You get absolutely nothing. The United States plan gives $1,200 to every person, no matter how poor, even if they're not working, even if they don't plan to work. On paper, the U.S. plan gives more to the very poorest. The question is, how are they going to get it? And the same issue would exist in Canada because it's hard to ensure you get money to people like the homeless. So in Canada, we're dealing with that, whether it's students, whether it's people that have lost most but not all of their income. They've actually fixed that somewhat. Mm-hmm. If your income is under $1,000 a month, you can get CERB now. So if you've gone from say like 2,000 to like 500, you can get CERB, but that hasn't happened yet. All the good things that have been fixed are because of the NDP basically. But the reality is that for a lot of people, either because the system was designed to exclude them, like in Canada, or because of logistical nightmares in the US, a lot of people who really need the help aren't going to get it. They're not going to get it fast enough, or they're not going to get it, period. Yeah, simple as that. Simple as that.
Okay, so this is from Comrade Internet, and they say, what are your thoughts on Gavin Newsom and the recent moves made by Pacific states?
I mean, so for those who don't know, Gavin Newsom's the governor of California. And I think I think of Oregon and Washington.
I thought Schwarzenegger was the governor of California.
That was a long time ago, but that was at least a whole governor ago.
Whatever.
Jerry Brown was the previous governor, who was actually governor as well in the 70s. Like he was governor in the 70s and then again recently.
Well, he still tweets like he's governor.
You know, well, you're once governor, you're always governor. It's like, you know, you're always Mr. President, even if you haven't been president for 40 years. You know what I mean? Like
I was pregnant and then on mat leave. I have no idea what's
like Jimmy Carter is still President Carter,
I
right?
understand that.
Yeah. So
don't get smart with me.
Yeah. So, basically what they said is that they're almost treating themselves as like nation states. And you look, ultimately, like if you're going to be constitutional about it, at least in Canada, when it comes to national emergencies, the federal government can assume a lot of powers. Trudeau hasn't implemented the National Emergencies Act, but he could, in which case he could basically override provincial health legislation. He could basically make the provincial governments irrelevant, at least for a period of time. And the United States would have certain abilities to do that. But I do think that in the absence of a clear, effective national approach, I think it's probably a good thing that some of the governors are looking at what they can do in their own state and in their region to protect their citizens. I think that's something that they certainly need to look at. And certainly they should continue to, try to find solutions that work nationwide, but you have to do what you can within your power to protect your citizens. And if Trump's failing, then you gotta do what you can. And people might be like, oh, constitutional wonks might wring their hands about it, but if the average Californian thinks you're doing a good job protecting them, they're ultimately the ones that are going to decide whether you remain governor or not. And same thing applies to Kate Brown in Oregon. I'm not sure, and I think it's Jay Inslee. Is it Jay Inslee in Washington, I believe it is. Right? He's governor, right? I know he ran for president, but I wasn't sure if he was governor or a senator.
I'm still looking.
Yeah.
Keep talking.
Yeah, so like that's so yeah, I think it's perfectly prudent to plan that strategy out. Here in Canada, again, the provinces have largely done their own thing in terms of their specific preparedness, but if needed, the federal government can implement some power. So Trump's language of like, I'm the ultimate decider, I have absolute power, isn't strictly true, but he has a lot more power than he could be. He could be using a lot more power than he is now, in terms of his ability to declare a national emergency and override the power of the states. He could certainly do that. Like during World War II, both in Canada and the United States, the federal government assumed a lot of power over the states. Like during World War II, a lot.
Mm-hmm. So apparently Schwarzenegger was governor in the 2000s?
Yeah, it was a long time ago, babe. And then it was Jerry Brown, I believe, for 8 years. And then
he married like a Kennedy, didn't he?
Yeah, he was governor. Yeah, I mean, he did. He had a successful term as. I don't know if it was successful, but I mean, he was governor. Like he didn't like just go away.
And then he cheated on her and had a baby with his help, which is such a problem. Yeah. Okay.
Joseph says, rolling on the floor laughing. Brianna Broderick actually asking Krista to talk longer. Look, we're all surprised. Weirder things have happened. Not really, but. And also, I didn't see who said it, so apologies, but I saw it when I was looking over it. Somebody said that the United States is 4% of the world's population, but they have 25% of the world's COVID-19 cases. So, per capita, they're punching above their weight in terms of that. That's per capita, they're not doing so hot. They're not doing so hot.
Yeah. Right. Okay. No. Joseph Mangano, channel member, of course, always with the best questions, says, do you think AOC will find herself on an island re Tara Reid, at least among her congressional colleagues?
I don't know if she'll be absolutely positively alone. You might hear Tlaib and Omar say something, although I think Tlaib has got to be careful because she's being primaried right now. And actually, the last poll I saw had her in a better position than I would think, because I was worried she was gonna lose because her district is highly populated with African Americans, and last time she won a split primary. This time she's running against one African American woman. I was a little worried, but it looks like she's winning, but it's close. So I wonder if she's going to be a little reluctant to take any controversial stands right now. And look, whether or not that's the right move, it's worth Rashida Tlaib surviving. That's priority one right now. I think we got to keep people like her in the House of Representatives, because I think like she's great. She's great. AOC might get some more support, but frankly, I don't think a lot of people are going to speak up. I really don't. I was hoping someone like Kirsten Gillibrand would, because she went out on a limb against Al Franken, if you guys remember. Gillibrand, who ran for president, her campaign wasn't successful, but she made her career, frankly, off speaking up for women who faced the sorts of thing Tara Reid did, but specifically within the military. And she was really, really attacked by a lot of Democrats for daring to call for Al Franken to resign, because she was one of the first people to do it. And I'm disappointed we haven't heard from her and some other people on Tara Reid. It's the right thing to do. Even if ultimately you side with Biden or whatever, like, this story needs to be talked about. And like, if you're being purely pragmatic about it, you got to talk about it now. And like, because you don't want to leave it to Trump in July and August to frame the discussion. Because this is not going away. And it doesn't matter that Trump has done everything Biden has done, but worse, or at least the same. Trump wants you in the muck with him, right? Trump wants you in the mud with him. Like, that's how Trump wins.
All done?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Another super chat from John Barlich. And he says, is it better for the left if Joe wins or loses in 2020? That's an interesting question.
It's a very interesting question. My inkling is that it might be better if he wins. I'm not necessarily 100% against accelerationism. But the theory back in 2016, and I'm not saying people were cheering for Trump to win. I don't think most people were doing that. But there was a theory, and I mean, look, I probably bought into this a little bit myself where, okay, Clinton has lost, Trump has won, Trump's 4 years are going to be awful, and they have been. They really have been. They're going to, and people are going to be fed up. They're going to see that Hillary Clinton has lost the election. They're going to realize that centrist neoliberalism can't get the job done. And they're going to go to Bernie Sanders and we're going to get a democratic socialist president. But it took Donald Trump to show everyone that. But what happened, guys? What happened was at least boomers did, not young people, but disproportionately boomers and senior citizens on the Democratic side got absolutely terrified. And they went to Joe Biden because he was the safe blanket. And so Trump winning didn't embolden the Democratic Party. It made it crawl back into its shell. Even as the party became more progressive. We know this because in poll after poll after poll in the exit polls, Medicare for All was winning. Green New Deal was winning. Bernie's policies were winning, but they were still voting for Biden because Donald Trump did not give people the feeling that the left can win. It was that we have to go to the most milquetoast. And not only do they have to be, ideologically centrist neoliberal, we have to have a straight white man again because we can't experiment at all. Even Hillary Clinton was too radical because she was not a white man, right? We need to go the absolute least risky route. And so I don't know if you could say another loss by the centrist Democrats, another loss to Donald Trump could embolden the left, but I'm not so sure. And that's all on top of the fact that the left includes a whole bunch of people, including some people that would be harmed by Donald Trump. And again, I don't shame people into not voting for, I don't shame people who aren't voting for Joe Biden. That's one thing you're not going to see on this channel. Even if I ultimately acknowledge that there are validities to lesser harm reduction voting, I'm never going to tell you you're a bad person for not voting for Joe Biden, right? Like if you want to vote third party or you abstain. But I don't know if it's actually productive for the left for him to lose specifically. I'm not convinced of that. Maybe I was more convinced of that after 2016 than I am now. Because right now people are risk averse, at least everybody above 40 in the Democratic Party.
Okay. All done?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Adam Burke, member of the channel. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you for stopping by, Adam.
Yeah. Says, hey, Christo, just wondering where the best place to buy your book would be. I couldn't get it on Amazon, and this will be my last...
Your last...
question.
Okay.
And then we'll go up. I'll go up. I'm going to bed.
Okay. I'm going to just...
Yeah.
So, basically, it should be on Amazon. Maybe Amazon sold out. Or they're one place to look would be the university. If you're in Canada, go to the University of British Columbia Press. Just go UBC Press Avalise, my last name, or my name, Christo Avalise, and it should almost certainly come up. Also, you can buy it from Chapters, things like that, online. It's not really sold a lot in stores. You might find it at specialty, left-wing bookstores in cities like Ottawa or Toronto. But, the local bookstore in Kingston, I think, has a few copies. But for the most part, my book isn't available in stores. In the States, I believe it used to be Washington University Press, but now I believe it might be Chicago. It does UBC Press's American book sales. You can look there because it might cost you more to buy directly from UBC, but you can go check that out. Amazon, I believe it might sell it, but you might have to select the paperback specifically, right? So double check there, that they might still sell it. But other than that, worst case scenario, reach out to me on social media. if you haven't figured it out, and I'll take a look so you can purchase the book.
And thank you.
Yeah, and thank you so much. And also check, like, some local libraries have it as well. So I know they're all closed right now actually, but libraries across Canada, university libraries, and a lot of university libraries in the United States have copies. So even if you're not a member of the university, you can often get a community pass to them too. So. Yeah.
Okay, I'll read this last one and then I'll go.
For sure.
This last super chat. So from Karen Zeta says, Briahna hype. Yay! Exclamation mark. P.S. Is Trudeau going to his family's cabin a fake scandal? Okay, give me a kiss for you. Okay.
Can you get me some more water?
Oh, God.
Thank you.
Your last serving.
So Karen, thank you so much. And thank you for the shout out to Briahna, who has to get to bed. She had a long day at work. Today. We're all working from home, but she had, how many hours of meetings did you have today? Like 4? Yeah, she had like 4 hours of Zoom meetings today. So she's obviously a little conked out. Okay, do I think it's a fake scandal? Not 100%, but it's largely overblown. Like, from my perspective, him going out with his family, the very people he self-isolates with, isn't a big deal. Briahna and I and our son, we go out, a couple times a week at least. We go to the park, we, kick a ball around, we play catch, things like that. We just walk. And because there's only 3 of us, and we isolate as a family unit, and we stay away from other people, and we try not to go to busy areas, there's nothing wrong with that. And Trudeau in that picture, those are all people he lives with. Nonetheless, he did travel from like where he's living to another property. I know it's not super far, but it even crossed provincial lines. And a lot of people, I think, wonder if other folks that went to their cab... It was in bad taste. Other folks, have summer homes or cottages that aren't too far from their regular home and have been told that it's inappropriate to go. I think that it was perhaps not the best move, but it's not nearly as big a scandal as some people are trying to make it. I think Trudeau could say, look, we practice social distancing guidelines to a large degree. Nonetheless, I understand that maybe I made a mistake, and I think a lot of people would forgive him. Not a big deal. And you know me, I'm not one to excuse Justin Trudeau. So the fact that I'm saying that means that it probably isn't that big of a scandal. Comrade Internet saying that you're having connection issues. From my end, it's been pretty smooth. I get like a stream health thing here, and I've not seen any notifications that we've been slow. But if there are issues, let me know, folks, about that. Aaron Clemens says AOC has good political instincts. I would agree. I think she's done a pretty good job. She's super young and having a lot of pressure on her. A lot of expectations on her from the left. A lot of vitriol from the right, the Republicans and Democratic Party right. For a first-term Congresswoman, she's done very well. And I think sometimes we've been very hard on her. Not that we shouldn't be hard on our own, but like I think we have to give her a little bit of space to grow. And I think that we have to remember that for most of us, like when Bernie went into Congress, I was 3 or 4, and so Bernie had a lot of time to become who he is. AOC deserves a chance to grow as well. Nathan Drake, kind of referencing I saw your comment, Nathan. I wanted to touch upon it. That Nathan suggests that they should have held up the aid package, AOC and Bernie and the other progressives, for maybe a week or so. And I think, maybe that could have been done, right? But you also have to consider the backlash. I mean, could they have held it back a week and maybe gotten away with it? Yeah, but I don't know if that actually leads to a better package. I'm not sure. John Barlich says, what is a way to get older Democratic voters to a more progressive platform to a group that is more unlikely to take risk with political choices? I mean, I think one of the ways you have to, I think Bernie did some of this which is trying to make the case that it would get, less active voters to the polls, that, we didn't do a super ambitious platform under Hillary Clinton. And because of that, a lot of people that voted for Barack Obama, because whether Obama deserved it or not, a lot of people were enthusiastic about Obama. And so because of that, he was able to win where she wasn't. And so I think you sell it as this is the way to reach new generations of voters, people that don't always vote. Bernie tried to do that, but I think he didn't do it enough, and he didn't do it. With enough of a contrast to Joe Biden. Bernie, I'm not saying Bernie should have been mean to Joe Biden, but Bernie should have made it very clear that he worries about Biden's enthusiasm, and he did some of that, but it was far too little, far too late. I think it's also about getting getting information to these folks about how, these policies are popular. And we can say, isn't it common sense? But you and I and the people who are watching this right now and the people who watch my channel, regularly, we're really plugged in, right? And so we understand this, but clearly, even in states that Biden won by big margins, the majority of people said they wanted Medicare for all. And while I'm sure that the younger folks wanted that stuff more, because they were with Bernie, and Bernie was more left-leaning. Telling those people that, okay, you believe in Medicare for all, but you're scared that the rest of the country doesn't. But what if we told you that independents actually like Medicare for all? What if we told you, and this is something Bernie could have done more, that what if we told you that Bernie consistently polls among all the primary contestants the best among independents? The sort of people that you need to win a general election. Those are the people you need. And not enough of that was done. And I think one thing was Bernie should have attacked Biden more about what he does and doesn't believe in. If you guys remember, Bernie went at Joe Biden over Social Security. Do you guys remember that? Just before Iowa. And Biden's numbers tanked. And that's when Bernie started to challenge Biden for first. And then Biden had an awful Iowa, an awful New Hampshire, and looked like he was done, right? It looked like it was over. He had second place in Nevada, but he was less than half of what Bernie got. He was on his last leg before South Carolina. And I think part of that was Bernie went at him on Social Security, and that softened Biden's support, at least temporarily. And what some of the exit polls showed is that some people actually felt that Biden supported Medicare for all. Those voters, I don't know where they were getting their info, but they just assumed that Biden supported Medicare for all. And so I think Bernie being much sharper and his campaign being much more vigorous in attacking Biden for not backing the things that the people of the party want could have helped. Because I think, John Barlich, the issue is the older Democrats probably support a lot of these things too. It's just they worry more than most that other people like them don't support these things. Yeah, Doug Grinberg says, wondering if Christo's book might be available as an EPUB from university library near you. Likely. My book is available from a lot of university libraries. Some of them in ebooks, some of them in physical copy, sometimes both. More in Canada than in the US, although a lot of the bigger universities in the US have my book. And again, even if you don't go to a university, even if you're not a student, a lot of them allow community members to get a library card. Sometimes it costs a little bit of money, but you get access to all sorts of books that your local public library just won't have. The amount of books that you can get at a university library, like academic history and political science and sociology books, public libraries don't have them unless you're in a really big city like Toronto or New York, maybe. That's a good place to get them. And again, you could purchase it online too. See, just talking trash, AOC been playing it real safe lately. See, I don't fully agree. There was these rumors she's not campaigning with Bernie a whole lot, but she was still out with Bernie. endorsed Bernie. Endorsed Bernie when he was at his lowest point in the campaign, when he was in a third and well back of Warren. AOC, I don't think played it that safe. I really don't. I don't think she played it safe. And again, for being perfectly honest, guys, she said something about Tara Reid. Bernie hasn't said anything about Tara Reid. And I'm not saying that's the only issue, but I'm saying, like, let's keep in mind, AOC did something that no one else has done among elected, Congress people, senators, Yeah, Comrade Internet's 100% right that disabled people and people who have chronic unemployment issues are like, want access to the aid program. And some people are saying in Canada, much like Republican senators, they're like, these people don't deserve access to this money because it would raise their standards of living. Because if you're on disability here in Canada, depending on your province, you often get well less than half that $2,000 a month. A lot of them get, $700, $800, $900 a month, sometimes less dollars a month to live on, because a lot of these people cannot work. Like, their disabilities make it so beyond, a job that maybe gives them a little bit of spending money, a few hours a week, they can't work. And so they live off far less than the $2,000 a month. So what the government is saying is the $2,000 a month is sort of like this basic amount of money you need to survive, and yet, disabled people have survived for years off far, far, far less, for far, far, far longer, right? Like not just for a few months as an emergency, but indefinitely. Environmental Canadian says, that they moved to the Green Party. And look, I certainly get that, you wanted to move to the Green Party, but I mean, jurisdictions matter, because in the last federal election, the Green Party wasn't always very clear about its own greenness, right? Like, the Green Party federally wanted us to rely on Alberta's tar sands. They wanted us to use the dirtiest oil in the world in some ways. That was her. That was Elizabeth May. And if you want, I could share you the article. She wanted to promote the Alberta tar sands. Now, you might support that. Some people do. But that's not very green to me. And Jagmeet was even more skeptical about that than Elizabeth May. And a lot of people have suggested in BC that the NDP's reliance on Site C and LNG has soured the Greens' environmentalists there. But we have to remember that the BC NDP government only governs due to the support of the BC Greens that hold the balance of power. And Andrew Weaver has never suggested he would take the government down over Site C and over LNG. But he did say he would take the government down over making it easier for workers to join a union. So the BC Greens would risk the entire government over card check certification, but not over core environmental projects. And so, from my perspective, I don't actually know if the Green Party is any meaningfully bit greener than the NDP. I really don't know. The NDP is insufficiently green. I am 100% on you there. BC federally, most provincial NDPs. But I don't know if the Greens are any better. I really don't. They might not be any bit greener than the NDP. And that's beyond the fact that, the Green Party supports Doug Ford's attacks on the charter rights, that the Green Party has a very, very nebulous position on the rights of women on abortion. The Green Party is not the alternative to the NDP. They're just not. On green issues or on any other issue. And I say that as somebody who comes from the far edge of the left on the NDP, who's been very critical of the NDP here on the channel, but also in some of my writing. Like, just talking dress, yeah. Like, Joseph, like some people have noted that AOC just commented on Tara, not exactly a safe position. Like, yeah, okay, just talking, you're right. It did take 3 weeks, but it took the national media 3 weeks, and no one else has said anything. And so, when you talk about these things, there's universal values, but then for lack of a better term, you have to grade on a curve. And if she's the first person, including Bernie, to come out and say something among elected officials, then she's still the first person among elected officials to come out and say something. And that is an unsafe position. Even if she was too slow like other people were too slow, it's a safe position. An unsafe position to take. It's all I'm saying. Comrade Internet says Bernie Sanders supporters should use his campaign apparatus to actually do revolutionary organizing. I mean, it depends. Like, we all have different definitions of revolutionary organizing. But even during Bernie's campaign, he was using his email lists and stuff to help protect people from ICE. He used his campaign lists to get people to show up at picket lines and support workers. So I certainly think that you could see some of that work continue. And I'm very encouraged by the fact that people like Briahna Joy Gray and others have sort of made it clear that they love and respect and admire Bernie, and they're not making an enemy of Bernie, but like they are not going to just follow him blindly. So the Bernie movement is not going anywhere. I really don't think so. Some of them are going to go over and vote for Joe, but some of the leaders leaders have emerged out of that will still be around, and I think that's crucial to see. Like, even Peter Dow, like, who was a Hillary backer in 2016, then he became a Bernie supporter. Now he's like, I'm not endorsing Joe, at least not yet. Like, this movement is not without high-profile names that are not following Bernie over to Biden yet, at least. Sean, I believe the tax cut. I'm not exactly sure, Sean, if that tax cut was passed. Sean is asking if the liberal tax cut for the rich upper middle class. To be fair, the tax cut did go to everybody but the very poorest, but it primarily benefits the upper middle class and the lower ends of the wealthy. I don't know if that formally passed or not. It will eventually, because it has the support of the liberals, blocs, and conservatives. So that's like, 90% of the House right there, right? The bill's going to pass at some point. I don't know if it's passed yet, though. It's an interesting question. The tax cut's going nowhere, though. I think the intent was to pass it so that it could be reflected on this year's taxes, but I honestly, I don't know. I think it certainly was in action, because I remember the NDP submitted their amendment to get rid of the tax cut for those making above 90,000 and fund dental care for everybody making under 90,000, but every other party rejected it. So. Aaron Clemens says, the whole point of not me, us, was this is beyond Bernie, as in, we'll take it from here. It's up to all of us, not one man, to enact change. That was his message, and I hope we continue to carry on. No, Aaron, that's 100% correct. Thanks for saying that. It's something I've been noting on this channel was like, fundamentally, Bernie's a great guy, and like Bernie's going nowhere. And like, I've made a couple of videos over the last couple of days that have been critical of Bernie, but like, I still love Bernie Sanders. Deeply love Bernie Sanders, and respect him. And like, I'm not going to say Bernie's betrayed me. I'm not canceling Bernie. We're still going to be covering Bernie positively on this channel, but it is about more than Bernie. And it's about acknowledging that there will be times where the movement and Bernie might move in different directions. And the movement might not follow Bernie. Some of them will, over to Joe Biden. But it doesn't mean that the movement is done. It doesn't mean that. And Bernie back in 2015, 2016, my video I put up earlier today on the channel, go check it out if you haven't seen it yet. But Bernie basically said, I can, suggest you vote for somebody. I can suggest that you move a certain direction, but fundamentally, this is not the sort of movement where I snap my fingers and you guys, do my command. That's your choice. And I think that this is a moment where we put that to the test. You guys remember this, that the Biden supporters and everyone else they were calling us cultists. We were Bernie fanatics. We were just devoted to this figure, and it was almost like it was some kind of like, like a cult. I'm trying to think of another word, but it's like a cult is a great word, and that we would do anything for Bernie, even if it was irrational. And then Bernie drops out, says endorse Biden, and says move over to Biden, please. A lot of people will, but a lot of people didn't, and everyone's like, hey, where's this cult? I thought Bernie's supporters had no free will and had no desire to act on their own, mindset, and that this was all about Bernie and wasn't actually about the policies. But we've proven that wrong with how vigorous the debate has been, right? H.S. Ross says, can you fill me in on the Canadian Greens and pro-choice issues? I thought in Canada we had no legal restriction on abortion, just medical association guidelines, and it was covered by insurance. Yeah, to a certain degree, H.S. Ross, you're right. In some of the smaller provinces like New Brunswick and PEI, there are certain difficulties because you can get access in hospitals, but it still requires you to get approval by doctors' panels, and it's still a very paternalistic way because there's no dedicated clinics in those provinces. And that's a big issue, right? So access can be limited sometimes if you're in rural areas because, again, the particular hospital near you might be more restrictive on that idea because it depends on the committee whether or not they grant you the right to get one. Whereas clinics in some more urban areas give you more rights in that sense. The issue with the Greens is that Elizabeth May in the past has made some remarks that have been really construed as her being personally anti-choice, even if ideologically she supports the idea of it. But also in this past election, and I noted this in some of my election coverage, you can go back and check some of this, the Green Party said, we will not whip votes. In Canada, we have this idea where the parties are a lot more strong. Members of parliament are much less likely in Canada to vote against party leadership. Like, most MPs just vote with their party every single time. That's how it works in Canada. You could think that's good, you could think that's bad, but it's how it is. The Green Party portrays itself as a party that doesn't like that whipping mentality. They don't like that mentality that, we tell our MPs how to vote on issues. Rather, they say that we will never tell our MPs how to vote. And then some people ask the question, well, does that mean that Green members of Parliament will vote with far-right conservatives to ban abortion? And if they do that, will the Green Party remove them from their caucus? And the Greens, and originally said no, they can vote however they want on any issue. We will never remove them because we don't believe in that kind of party discipline. And then they tried to correct course and say, well, we wouldn't remove somebody for a vote, but you have to be pro-choice to run for the Greens. But then researchers from the Broadbent Institute from Press Progress approached various Green candidates who were never asked about the issue of choice, or had publicly on Facebook and Twitter made openly anti-choice statements, and they were allowed to run. So the Green Party, in its platform, believes in choice, but in its refusal to punish members of Parliament who would vote against choice, functionally believes that anti-choice views are acceptable. Compare that to the NDP and the Liberals, which will not allow you to sit in caucus if you have an anti-choice perspective federally. And I think that's like a different perspective. Bose Einstein 7 says, both parties are anti-life, creatures that are vital in preserving the planet based on their domestic and global actions in history. Will Biden saying he's a progressive change the voter turnout? I mean, in terms of turnout, if Biden can convince people that he has a bold, exciting platform, that's going to shake things up. I think it could increase turnout. If Bernie's successful at getting his movement involved, it could increase turnout. But I do worry that Biden won't be believed or won't do enough. Like his whole, we're going to make Medicare available to everybody 60 and older instead of 65 and older. It's not going to be enough. His student debt proposal is better. It's better than nothing, but it's not the simple, we're going to cancel all your debts, which is what Bernie Sanders was proposing. I think that Biden can't just say he's a progressive. He needs to actually do 2 or 3 key things, Medicare for all, Green New Deal, things like that, to convince people. And a lot of folks here, a lot of my viewers have told me they will not believe him. But you are not the average low to medium information voter, right? For every one person that watches my channel, there are millions of voters, right? Like, it's a simple reality. Apparently this Ted Maloff guy has dumped me from his rotation. It's good to hear. Good to hear. One thing, guys, I've had some people who have been like, if you at all suggest we vote Biden, I am going to stop following you. And I'm like, look, I you can have your opinion, but threatening your favorite YouTuber, I don't think that's the way to actually get them to believe in your side. Just FYI. Yeah, Femi Bot notes it took on average 13 days for any major news organization to cover it. So that's far too long, right? Remember the first story, Yahoo News published something, and then it got deleted and then shifted over to Yahoo Sports, which is the weirdest thing ever. Yeah, Joseph makes a point that because of Bernie's friendship with with Joe Biden, he might not say anything about Tara Reade. That's inexcusable, especially that's inexcusable. I'm not defending that, but I think maybe you have a point that personal friendships might be playing a role. It's unacceptable though. Bernie should say something about Tara Reade. Samantha asks, what tactics would you use to get Biden to move left? I think you have to convince him that it'll drive turnout. You have to convince him that the polling's there. Now, on some of these issues, I got to be honest with you. I think Biden would rather lose than implement. Biden's a member of the political elite. But I think you have to try to convince him that some of these Bernie platform pieces are what it's going to take to defeat Donald Trump. And that's how you do it. I think that, if you're on the fence, you could suggest that, look, you've gotten X amount of Bernie people on board. If you'll never get 100, but if you want to go from saying getting 80% of Bernie people to vote for you to say getting 90, 95, then you need to go Medicare for all, right? Or you need to, do Green New Deal or something, or even if you're going to do a public option, you gotta really, really commit to making it far more robust. There's gotta be a push to suggest that the path to victory is not simply being not Donald Trump. You gotta offer more than that. And I think that, getting these ideas out there is important. And really underlining and that Joe Biden won this. He did. And it looks like his win's going to be bigger than Clinton's win against Bernie. But Biden never won because of his ideas. Biden won because he was Obama's VP. Biden won because he had good name recognition. And Biden won because he was always seen, except for a 2-week window when Bernie was winning, he was always seen as the best, strategic choice. Like him or hate him, he was the guy to beat Donald Trump. Now, whether that's accurate or not, that was a consistent viewpoint of the Democratic membership. For those of you that are longer time viewers, back in December, January, I was covering this. I was saying that in poll after poll, Bernie is seen as the person that represents the values of Democrats. He's the person that represents that you think cares about regular people, that you think cares about people like you, that it would do the most to help people like you. But on the electability question and on the party unity question, those are different questions, but they both kind of play this tactical role. Biden almost always led. And Bernie, except for that, basically Iowa to the day before South Carolina window, was never able to break that wall down. Nathan Drake says South Korea is making America look like a third world country by having a safe nationwide election. I mean, to a certain degree, but I'd say I don't know if any of the other, I don't know if we couldn't do one in Canada right now either. I think that's more a credit to South Korea than it is a admonishment of the U.S. on that particular issue. I don't know how you do it in the United States. I mean, South Korea, again, they have certain approaches that would not be tolerated in Canada and the United States. The way they measure and track people. We don't tolerate that in Canada. No, I'm not American. I'm Canadian, but I have a deep interest in American politics and Canadian politics as well. One thing to note about that, and no firm 100% commitments yet, guys, but I may be starting a Canadian politics podcast with a fellow creator. And so we haven't 100% tied everything down, but we've gone past the more than musing stage. And so a lot of people have said, where's the CanCon? One of the challenges of CanCon is that the YouTube audience is small for it. And so I might start a dedicated Canadian politics podcast. And it would work on the Chapo model where, one episode would be free and one episode would have like a Patreon, subscriber thing. Cause that's the ad generation revenue of that. But look forward to something like that. And on that we'll talk. It's not like we'll never talk about the US on that, but everything will be in relation to Canada. So look for that at least over the next couple months or so. Femibot, you gross. Stephen Harper is a wealthy bridge troll. He is, but we have to remember that Stephen Harper, when he ran in 2011, didn't run as like the Victor O'Brien loving guy we see right now. He really did run a campaign on like this idea of like an inclusive conservatism. And of course it was a lot of it was lies, but they were able to convince like many people of color, many racialized people in Toronto that the Conservatives were a safe party for them. The Conservatives were a safe party for them. And I think that's definitely a factor. That Steve, like the Conservatives right now aren't necessarily trying the same thing, but that's the reason they want a majority government. And that's the reason why they lost this time, because they didn't run that kind of campaign. And Andrew Scheer did really well in Saskatchewan and Alberta, but really struggled in Ontario and Quebec. And that's why he lost despite getting more votes than the Liberals. That's a major factor. H.S. Ross says, will it be David Dole? Okay, I'm not going to, but it's not David. I don't want to put him on the limb, everybody think it. David and I are going to continue to collaborate. I'll probably be a guest on a show at some point. Whenever, it happens every month or two or three, I go on David's show. But no, it's not David Dole. It's not David Dole. I'd be happy to work with him on a project, but it's not David at this point. It's somebody else. Again, I don't want to mention names because if it falls through, I don't want anyone to be connected to a project. Samantha Seither recommends we all play the Final Fantasy VII remake. It looks really fun. I was a big Final Fantasy 8 and 9 fan, more than 7 personally. That might get me lose me some supporters. But I am looking forward to that eventually. Although I believe it's only on PlayStation right now, so I might wait till it goes to PC. But it does look really fun and it looks really cool. So I'll probably play that at some point in the future. Survivor Mary says, just watched Bernie's town hall on the economy, and it was mostly all about the airlines. Thought I would be sick. I mean, I didn't get to see it, obviously, because I was here doing this. I think it's great he's still doing these town halls. His one with Cardi B last night, apparently, was pretty decent, and Cardi had some great lines. I think that he's still doing what he can to promote the issues that matter to regular people. Although I don't know why the special focus on the airlines tonight. I know that's a hard hit industry, and the airlines are a source of good paying unionized jobs. So I could see why Bernie would want to support that. But of course, as we know, it's not just the airlines that have been hit hard. Lisa's right here when she says, Crystal Abelise, if Bernie start backing more progressive candidates like Cori Bush, Betsy Sweet, and Shahid Buttar, perhaps more lefties would get elected into the House and Senate. And Lisa, you're probably 100% right. And this could be a good tactical move. Maybe. I just thought about this right now. Maybe I'm off base. Maybe I'm being totally optimistic. But with Bernie making like an early and enthusiastic endorsement of Biden, now, if Bernie starts to support some of the down ballot progressives, he won't be seen as doing it as a way to attack Joe Biden. He'll just be like, look, I'm supporting Joe for president. I just have a particular opinion about down ballot progressives, and I'm going to make my impact there. That would allow Bernie to, fight off the idea that he's helping Donald Trump while still pushing the party in a leftward direction. And because he's not raising money right now, he could encourage people to donate to these people. Donate to Rashida Tlaib. Donate to Cori Bush and others. Help them get elected and join me. Because Bernie's still going to be a senator in November. Join me, have people join me in Washington so that whether it's Donald Trump or Joe Biden, we can push left-wing ideas. I think that's a great idea. And I think, especially now that he's not running his own campaign, he should be devoting some time to down ballot progressives. I do think so. Because Bernie, his Senate seat's not even up this time, I don't think. So, and even if it was, Bernie's got a pretty safe seat in Vermont. Like, Bernie should be spending more time helping Biden, like whether or not we agree with that, but you endorse him. If Biden wants you to campaign for him, Bernie will do it. But Bernie should also be there for down ballot people. He should have people like Cori and Betsy and Shahid on his streams talking about their campaigns. I think that would be a good idea. Yeah, Comrade Internet says the Sandinistas came to power as a result of an earthquake for the regime in Nicaragua. I'm not a deep expert on that. I guess you could have disaster socialism. Naomi Klein has always said that disaster capitalism is a thing. But, maybe disaster socialism is a thing too. Yeah, Samantha, kind of similarly to what Lisa was saying, I think progressives should use all the money that was going to Bernie to elect Shahid Buttar over Pelosi as a way of getting back at the establishment over screwing Bernie by it. I mean, look, whether or not it's about screwing somebody or revenge, I just personally think that Shahid's better than Nancy, and he should represent that district. Even if you believe in the mythology of the Democratic Party, let's say they're not lying liars, and you believe that, you can't run left-wing candidates in moderate areas of the country. Well, you should be able to run left-wing candidates in California, in urban California. You should be able to. Nancy Pelosi isn't a left-wing representative. She should go run in more moderate areas. Leave seats like hers to Shahid Buttar. That's what it should be about, even if you believe in that idea, right? I'm not saying I do, but my view is Bernie could certainly do that. I know he's shifted some of his fundraising to charity to raise money for people that need help during the coronavirus, during COVID-19. But I certainly think that Bernie Sanders could turn some of his machine over to help fundraising for down ballot progressives. I think that would be great. I really do. Dafrax says, Christo Abelis, could progressives take on local state offices to continue the movement down up? Perhaps a merger with Green Bull Moose and DSA. In terms of that merger, I couldn't say. I'm not a member of any of those organizations, so I don't want to speak for them, and I don't know the ideological and especially the personal conflicts that might exist between those groups as to why they might not merge even beyond ideology. But I think in general, it doesn't always have to be local, but in general, you have to find beachheads. You have to find electoral beachheads. Again, the way the CCF-NDP started in Canada was that they were able to form a beachhead in the prairie regions and in one mining community on the East Coast in Cape Breton. Like that was for a long time, right? In some Western provinces, that's where they were strong. And then eventually they went national. And so I wonder if the goal for these parties is to find their ability to elect Congress people in parts of the country. The challenge is always the primary system in the United States, because right now the easiest way to do it is to do what AOC did, which is run as a Democrat in a safe blue district, flip the win the nomination, and then because everyone just most people are they go in November and they vote for red or blue no matter who. Like that's a lot of voters. And that's how we got AOC. Now the question is, can you do something where you're able to, as a Green Party or as a DSA, not as a DSA running as a Democrat, but as somebody with running under the DSA banner, actually win a seat? I don't know yet. I don't know. At the municipal level in the United States, you have seen people running as socialists win seats, but that hasn't translated at the congressional level yet. And when that happens, though, I think that'll be very interesting. Bernie sort of did that, right? Bernie sort of did that when he ran as a independent technically, but he was like a member of like a socialist party and stuff. Yeah, Joseph, I'm not exactly sure of the numbers, but the United States is definitely the global leader in COVID deaths, and New York State alone is got to be pushing near the rest of the world, like the non-American record. And I know that there was a big spike in New York State because of how they calculated it. So they added like a few thousand people who were victims of this because of a new methodology. James Miller says that the fact that Bernie lose proved that revolution is necessary for real change. We've tried fighting within the system and the opposition had every advantage. I mean, maybe. I don't know, though. I mean, Bernie came awfully close. And it took everything to stop him. It took and they almost failed. So I'm not 100% down on electoralism yet. But I do think it is important to remember that the reason why Bernie was successful between 2016 and 2020, I know he's technically losing by more now than he did back then, but the reason why he came within a 3-day window of winning. If South Carolina goes differently and Super Tuesday goes differently, Bernie's the nominee. It's done. It's done, 100%. 100% it's done. Then, he worked with these movements. He worked with these movements beyond electoralism, unions, the Fight for 15, environmental groups, young people, migrant right groups, etc. Yeah, some people are noting that like the corporate media sabotaged Bernie. Look, I don't disagree. I really don't. It's one of the worst. The American corporate media is one of the worst I've seen in terms of that. The only media I could think was how Corbyn was treated in Britain. Yeah, again, people who are like, look, like if you don't like my content anymore, like Vanguard says, yeah, Sam Cedars pretty aggressively anti-Bernie or bust, but you don't see me getting my panties in a twist about it and unsubscribing from Majority Report. And like, look, if a channel doesn't like suit your interests or your viewpoints anymore, like, yeah, unsubscribe from them, right? Like, if you don't like my stuff anymore, then like it is what it is, right? But then it also comes down to the fact that like if you're going up to people being like, unless you take this position, I will 100% unsubscribe, and I will tell everyone you suck, and I will tell everyone to unsubscribe, then I don't think that's gonna go very well for most people, and I don't think that's gonna convince anybody. You know, I've had people disagree. Like, so for example, I've said that, you know, Bernie was wrong to say it was irresponsible for you to not vote for Joe, and I had some people say that, well, actually, Bernie's right. We have to stop Trump at all costs. But those people weren't disrespectful to me. They weren't cruel to me. And neither are people when I suggested it might be good to vote with a harm reduction strategy. Not saying that I'm 100% sold, but that I'm, you know, sympathetic to elements of that idea. Some people have said, well, you're just a traitor, just like this person and that person. Like, you know, most people have been perfectly fine to have, you know, rational discussions about it. And that's one great thing about my supporters, my viewers, is that the vast majority of them understand that, like, this is a question that's going to divide people, and those divisions do not mark the difference between good people and bad people. And I think that's very important. We cannot afford to have us become divided on the whole, are you going to vote for Bernie? Are you going to vote for Joe? Or are you going to, vote for a third party? That's not what should divide this movement. We can have passionate debates about that. But like, the question is, like, what do we do with the left going forward, right? And I don't know what that answer is, but I'm not gonna, become a hardcore vote blue no matter who channel and tell everyone else to F off. And neither am I going to be, a hardcore anti-Biden channel and tell everyone who dares vote Biden to F off. I don't think that's productive, and I don't think that fits the nature of my coverage. As I've noted, my goal is to cover Biden fairly. When Biden is Biden, I'm going to call him out. But if Biden does some good things, and he might, then I'll give him praise from time to time. John Barlick says, how did you get your start in politics? From my end, I started in politics about 10 years ago when I moved to Ontario for grad school. I grew up in New Brunswick. I did my undergraduate degree at UNB. Then I moved to Ontario and I got my master's degree and PhD at Queen's in Southern Ontario. And then while here, I got involved in the NDP, the basically Canada, like a party that sort of would be like the Bernie Sanders, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar wing of the Canadian politics. And then also got involved in my union at grad school. We had a grad school union for our teaching assistants and fellows. I did all of that. And then after that, I went and started doing more media work, as a academic. Around the time I graduated from my PhD, I did more and more media interviews on like on TV and on radio, on like traditional media, being like a talking head. And that's how I sort of got involved in politics and political media. And over the last few years, I've done a lot of writing. And it was about a year and a bit ago. I started in January of 2019. I started this YouTube channel. And it, grew slowly at first, but it's grown quicker in the last couple months. Samantha makes a point that, Bernie's worried about getting blamed for Trump winning. So he's going over to Biden right now and in an effort to do whatever it takes to avoid that blame. And I think you have a point. I don't know. See, here's the thing. I do agree with you, Samantha, that Bernie is worried about being blamed. But I disagree with the idea that he could do anything to stop that, right? Because like here's the deal. They're going to blame Bernie and the Bernie movement no matter what if he loses. I guarantee you. Because remember, last time Bernie did 41 events for Hillary. More Bernie voters voted for Hillary than Hillary voters voted for Obama in 2008. None of it mattered. All they talked about was like Russia and Bernie Sanders. That's the reason they lost. It was never about Hillary's actual failures, right? It was never about that. It was always about Bernie and like other things that they couldn't control, right? They were just lying about it to try to cover their tracks. And they will do the same thing this time. So I think Bernie's making a mistake thinking that anything he would do would protect him from blame. But I agree that that's definitely the case. Veritas, see, I don't think Bernie Sanders is a fraud. I disagree with his strategy in this particular interest, but I don't see Bernie as a fraud. Bernie is who he's always been. Bernie has limitations, but I won't call Bernie Sanders a fraud. Rich says, I agree, freedom of speech, but these haters trying to steer the narrative into negativity. Stay strong, don't pay attention to these losers. Well, thanks, Rich, for the question or for the comment. I think you're 100% right. Honestly, guys, we have to have these debates among like the Bernie movement about is it right to endorse Biden? Is it wrong? If you're going to do it, how should you do it? When should you do it? Should you say to people, vote for Joe Biden, but not become part of Biden's movement? Like AKA say, look, Biden's got my vote, but I'll never be part of the Biden camp. I'll continue to criticize him and call him out for his limitations. I'm not going to lie for Joe Biden. Like these are debates we need to have, right? But for us to like not tear one another apart, it can't descend into like this whole like we like this whole like you're either with us or against us. It's not going to work. And like we got a lot of other things to worry about. Like Rashida Tlaib, like she needs help. Other down ballot progressives need help. Shahid Buttar needs help. There are things that even if we disagree about like Bernie's strategy, there's like people that like we need to get elected. Simple as that. Matt Lipton says Harper is a bootlicker. Is he though? Or is Harper the one having his boots licked? Like at some point when you like, because he's like a rich and powerful man, you know, I was like, I don't know. I think like Bernie Sanders is a communist. Bernie's not a communist. And if anything, a lot of my viewers would be like, yeah, unfortunately, Bernie's not a communist. You know, a lot of my viewers might not be communists, but often, you know, I remember these stories where they would share these old clips of Bernie from the 1970s saying that we need to nationalize major industry. And they would be sharing it as like this attack on Bernie. But all I would be thinking was, man, that makes Bernie a little bit cooler, doesn't it? I think if the fact that Bernie Sanders is not more left-wing than he is was a disappointment to me and many of my viewers. Maybe not all of them, but most of them, I would say. Comrade Internet says, Christo, I think you should really watch Code Geass, Geass. I've never even heard of that. I will look it up, Comrade Internet, and maybe I'll watch it if it intrigues me. Vanguard says 8/7, unsubscribed. I'm sorry. I do think 9 is objectively the best Final Fantasy, though. I really do. It was like the last truly classic Final Fantasy. 9 is probably the pinnacle of like traditional JRPG design. Yeah, Samantha says that Final Fantasy VII looks great. I've seen some reviews on YouTube and stuff. It does look incredibly beautiful, Samantha. You're right. It looks great. I see Veritas here. He's spacing it out enough where I'm not gonna thing, but he keeps calling Bernie a fraud. I just disagree. I disagree, Veritas. Bernie's wrong here, but he's not a fraud. He's not a fraud at all. So, in general, please stop spamming too. It's because it's harder for other people who are harder for people who are trying to follow along with other discussions. Bernie Sanders did criticize the Democratic Party. He noted at least one prominent tweet where he said the Republican establishment, the Democratic establishment, we can't allow either to get away with things or something like that. You might say his criticism was insufficient. As I've said, I agree. I think Bernie should have went harder and sooner at Biden. But Bernie did criticize. North American says, Christo Abelis, thoughts on the eco-socialist running for Green Party leadership? Dimitri Laskaris, I mean, he seems like a pretty decent guy. We follow each other on social media, on Twitter. I don't know a whole lot about him, frankly. Like, I know he's got the correct position on Israel-Palestine. He's definitely a left-winger. I don't know what his chances are. Like, I don't know the layout of the Green Party internally that well. It's a small enough party that if he could build a movement, maybe he could win. But I worry that Elizabeth May is still a deeply, deeply influential person, and I don't believe that she's gonna want Dimitri Laskaris to be the leader of the Green Party. Veritas says, Christo, you aren't seeing my questions. Bernie was a fraud. Again, if you call me the thing, I read these as fast as I can. Veritas, please don't call me a fraud. That's not nice. I try to read as many questions as I can because I prioritize super chats. But I don't want to be, I don't want to exclude people that for whatever reason just, don't have money. So I try to read as many questions. The one drawback to that is when Briahna has to go, I have a hard time getting through them very quickly. So I might not always see your question right away. Please don't take that as an insult. But I try to get to as many as I can. How tall are you, Christo? You look very short Canadian bot. Yes, I am short. I'm short. I'm about 5'6". Yes, I am a short man. Yes. Well done. Well done for making fun of me. All right. Let me see. We got somebody here. Sorry, guys. I just saw the person saying using slurs here. Put them on timeout here. 1 second. Should do it. One thing I'm going to do for next stream is I'm going to... I'm going to... Yeah, I'm getting rid of some of these people here. There we go. Okay. We got a lot of people here. But yeah, no, Bernie is not a fraud, and is people who are bringing in slurs here and comments that are derogatory towards trans people or to anybody else are not welcome. If you guys see those things, let me know. Again, I'll try to catch them quicker. I don't want anyone to be to feel unwelcome here, but that's something that I don't tolerate. Those things. Making fun of me is fine. Most people just do it as a joke, but people that are doing it to my fellow my viewers and marginalized people especially, I have no truck or trade with that. And I don't even know where the racist came from, because like this isn't even that big of a stream. You guys are great, but like this is like, you know, like when Bernie was like, when we were like in the heat of the election, the heat of the primary, we would get 400 or 500 people sometimes, and like then you get a lot more racists because the stream would go out beyond my bubble, right? So a lot of people saying that they like 8, a lot of people saying they like Final Fantasy 6, which was called Final Fantasy 3. Yeah, that's definitely something I'm going to do. I'm going to find some people here that are fairly regulars here. You don't feel like you have to moderate. I'm just going to put some people here. It should carry over to other streams. So if I see people I know, I'm going to make you guys moderators. You don't have to do it, but it's something that you guys can do to help the channel. I would appreciate it. Briahna helps with that when you guys are here. Yeah. So I've made a few people moderators. Yeah. Somebody. Matt Lipton saying. Somebody's calling themselves Panzer Leader. That's interesting. I'm going to preemptively remove that person, because I don't like the sound of that name. Yeah. I haven't watched Picard yet. Have not watched Picard yet. Yeah. I think one of the challenges with the original Final Fantasy VII was that it was the first. It was like the first modern Final Fantasy, like off like Super Nintendo, and so they really hadn't figured out like the art style yet. Whereas with 8 and 9, I know they didn't come out a whole lot later, but they were like they knew more about like coding on the PlayStation, like designing for that hardware, that the technological jumps from 7 to 8 especially were so massive. Somebody says, tall people are inefficient. They consume more food and space, but aren't more productive than... I mean, maybe. Although I'm like a pretty stocky guy, so I don't know if I can say I consume less resources. I don't miss any meals. Let's just put it that way. John Bartlett says, hey, what political issue have you changed your mind about? That's a good question. Like, well, I've become more, I guess, convinced about the need for, like, I don't even know if it's a change my issue, but one thing recently is, like, I'm still not sold on a basic income overall. Like, I still think there's a lot of neoliberal risks, but this crisis has really shown me that there's a certain advantage to, like, more streamlined universal payments, even if they lack some nuance. Because, you know, means testing just doesn't work in the sound system. That's one thing that I think a lot more progressives in Canada have come to maybe see, that, you know, with the CERB, the big problem with the CERB is it's means tested, and that if it was more universal, maybe not even fully universal, but if it was more universal, then it would have been way easier to get the help the Canadians need when they needed it. So I've made a few people moderators, so hopefully that helps, guys. Yeah, I didn't want to I didn't want to lose my space, because once you go too far down, I lose the comments, and I don't want to miss questions and comments, right? Yeah, that's a good point. Matt Lipton just says that Canadian Dimension did an interview with Dimitri Lascaris. If you look it up, on YouTube, they have a video, but if you just go to Canadian Dimension, they have I think they have it in print too. So Canadian Dimension is a great source. I've written for them a bunch of times, like probably over a dozen times, easy. So go check them out. They're one of the best places to get like left-wing Canadian commentary, and they're great. Yeah, like yeah, it was the first 3D, and much like a lot of the early 3D games, like uh, they just didn't age well. Like the sprite art on Super Nintendo from some of the best games is still great now, right? Whereas like revolutionary technology, like ages fast. It's a reason why World of Warcraft has had such a long life, because the graphics weren't revolutionary when the game came out, and so it was able to run more efficiently and stuff. And I think like in Final Fantasy VII, they tried so many new things, but with 8 they didn't have to experiment as much, and it looked way better. Sarah Kay says, "Oh yes, Jeff Bezos is up 12 billion due to COVID." Yeah. Did you guys see the thing where Bezos set up a like a charity, like the Amazon Relief Fund, and then he was like telling everyone to donate to it? Um and then he was like, "Man, you've made money on this crisis. Even if you haven't, even if Bezos lost money, he would still have more money than you could ever need. So from my perspective, he shouldn't be asking for donations. He should just just be giving people money." Do you think Tupac is dead? I would lean towards yes. I do think Tupac has passed away. I don't think he's around anymore. I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, Homophone Productions about the bailout. I mean, I think there might be some class consciousness from it because it was so blatantly favored to the rich. But I don't know, right? I don't know. I mean, like the Republican tax cuts were like that, but most Trump supporters are still very pro-Trump, even though that was blatantly a giveaway to the rich and wealthy and well-connected. So I don't know. I don't know if this bailout will sharpen things. On the other hand, you know, Bernie Sanders doesn't happen if not for the bailout from like from 2008, 2007, 2009, whatever. Like that bailout like helped create this mass discontent, which eventually led to Bernie Sanders running for president. You know, it led to Occupy and all these things as well. The NDP needs a Posadist caucus. I don't know about that, Comrade Internet. The NDP's generally been pretty anti-nuclear for most of its history. I don't know if Posadism is gonna flow too much with the base. Oh, James Gardner, the Epstein thing. Look, he probably didn't kill himself, right? Or sorry, he probably did kill himself. Or sorry, excuse me, I'm tired. Epstein probably did not kill himself. Like, look, can I say 100%? No, I'm not an expert. But Occam's razor is that someone killed him. Like, like, right? I'm not even a conspiracy theorist guy. I'm not. But like, think about it. The guy was in his, everyone knew this was he was a risk to end his own life. Right? Everyone knew. The man, like, if there was one thing that united the Democrat, like Clinton wanted him dead because he was in the book. Trump was in the book. The Queen's son was in the book. Right? Like, the cameras died at the exact moment needed for no one to see it, and then the guards left for the exact moment for no one to see it. Like, look, is it impossible? 100%. Am I 100% certain? No. But Occam's razor, you know, the thing like the most likely explanation is generally the correct one. Is that is that somebody murdered him? Sorry, Jake Sisko. I know it was very confusing there. It was very confusing there. And what I always wondered is like why Trump people and like right wingers are in on this conspiracy, because like it's like everybody but the left. Everybody but the left has like, because like neoliberals are in the book, like royal family members are in the book, Trump and other like rich right wingers are in the book. Jeremy Corbyn's not in the Epstein book. Bernie Sanders isn't in there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like, I don't know. So, one thing, somebody says, don't totally censor up the chat because of one troll. From my perspective, the only things I want, for people who are helping to moderate, the only things is that if people are spamming, put them on a timeout. If they are, critical of me or saying stuff that's pro-Trump, that's fine. But the second that they start using slurs, the second that they start mocking and are disrespectful to other guests in the chat, then that's when I take issue with that. So we don't censor speech insofar as we respect everyone's fundamental humanity. H.S. Ross says, much love and respect to lefties of other views, but if we can't even get enough people to vote for Bernie, what hope do we have of getting enough people to engage in revolutionary general strike? I mean, I think there's a point to that, right? But even if it's not revolutionary general strike, it can sometimes be localized, wildcat efforts can have rather prominent effects. The Fight for 15, was at least at first was very localized in certain communities and certain industries, and then went national and international. And so it might not lead to, the overthrow of the capitalist state, but it can lead to notable reforms. And I think that's important. H.S. Ross, again, thank you so much for all your great questions and support, H.S. We have to build the left. Extra electoral activism and class war social democratic electoralism are complementary, crucial parts of that. I would agree. I would agree that the left cannot be either or. It can't be either or. You need to have both. You need to have, whether it's traditional union organizing, whether it's organizing communities, whether it's international solidarity, or whether it's just good old-fashioned winning elections. They all play their role. Yeah, like Matt Lipton says, if Canada got a proportional representation, do you think we'd see groups like the Pirate Party give it another go? Certainly. If we got proportional representation, a whole bunch of different parties would try. And it would depend on the specifications of the system. The way it would likely work in Canada, if we got proportional representation, is the proportions would still have to be province by province. Because ultimately, you can't disturb the balance of votes between provinces, because that would require an amendment to the Constitution, which isn't happening. But if you preserve the constitutional balance of seat weights between all the provinces, then you can do proportionalism within the provinces. So what would likely happen is you would either keep the same size parliament and make some of the seats regional seats, or you would make the parliament bigger, adding regional seats to the various provinces based on their proportions. Most systems would require you get at least 3 to 6 or 7% minimum to get access to proportionality. So there's still a chance that most of the parties that actually win seats are the ones that exist now. If you look right now, the only parties that cracked 5% were the parties that actually have seats right now. Now, I do think that smaller parties would have a chance of hitting 5% in a proportional system. But what might happen more than welcoming in a whole bunch more small parties would just be a better distribution of power within the existing parties. AKA, you'd see more power for the NDP and Greens, less power for the Liberals and Conservatives. The Bloc would likely get about the same as they get right now, because the proportionality would be within Quebec, not nationally. So that's what it would be, maybe, at least at first, I think, more than, say, seeing a whole bunch of private party or communist or like far-right, like your People's Party MPs. I think most of the movement is going to be within the 5 major parties that exist right now. Because all those parties have demonstrated they get above 5. And what I think would happen is that the Liberals would likely suffer because of this, because their strategic vote argument goes out the window. At least mostly it does. And I do think that the one party you would for sure see become viable is the PPC. I do see the PPC in a proportional system probably getting up above 5. So you would see the Conservatives lose to the PPC, you would see the Liberals lose to the Greens and the NDP, but on the whole, you would likely see a division of powers where the Liberals are probably still the biggest party, but would require significant support from the NDP and Greens to form a government, and it would give the left a lot more power. And the Conservatives would likely never form a majority government again, and would have a hard time even forming a majority coalition. I mean, yeah, I think it's possible, Matt. I think it's possible. I think that it would really depend on their ability to get 5% on a regional or provincial basis. Like, when you say the left, Dragzilla, in the book, do you mean like the left, or do you mean like Hillary Clinton left? No one in this chat is in the book. Oh, no, you guys can swear. You guys can swear. Pork chop, no, you guys can swear. When I say slur, I mean like slurs for, say, like gay people, or slurs for racial slurs, or slurs against trans people. Like, that's what I'm talking about. I don't tolerate that stuff. Yeah, Lovely Pariah is asking about what will happen to Canadian tenants who weren't able to pay rent during the COVID-19 measures, particularly in Ontario. I mean, yeah, as you know, it's going to matter province to province. It's going to be a big discrepancy. A lot of people have complained about the BC plan because they see it as a subsidy to landlords, but it's something. Some provinces are giving no support to tenants at all. One thing I'm worried about is that a lot of provinces have banned evictions during this crisis, and that's good. But if you're not earning any money, it's like you're going to owe like 4 months rent at the end of it. Let's say this lasts 4 months exactly. I don't know if that's optimistic or not, but just for math in our head, let's say you pay $1,000 a month for rent. I know that's really low for a lot of people, but let's say you pay $1,000 a month in rent for 4 months. And, you know, you can't get evicted, you can't pay it. But then when, like, September comes along, like, what are you going to do? Are landlords going to demand all $4,000 up front? Because most people won't be able to pay that. Is there going to be an understanding that everyone's going to be expected to pay 10% more? So instead of paying $1,000 a month, you'll pay $1,100 a month. And then basically in 40 months, you'll be caught up. Is that how it's going to work? What about people that want to move? Will they be expected to pay all up front, or will the payment plans continue? These are things we haven't considered yet. And I don't know what the answer is going to be, because I don't know how long the eviction order, like the eviction ban, the eviction moratorium is going to last. Will they extend it? Will the government pass legislation to protect people that have engaged in a payment plan with their landlords? I don't know. I really don't know. There should have been I don't know how you do it. It's complicated. I know not all landlords are big landlords. I know a lot of them have their own, like their landlord is the bank. Like, I know that. But fundamentally, I worry about the backlog of rent debt for a lot of low income people, or even like medium income people. That's not going away. Adam Burke says, no question, just wanted to send some support. Adam, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate all your support. Over the history of this channel. It's been very much appreciated. Oh yeah, Smokey is here as always, but he's over there on the couch. He's been a little bit sleepy tonight. So he's been pretty chill. I know Joseph says, I can't see any scenario under which Bernie gets the nomination. I guess, like, hypothetically, and, like, I'm not, like, but, like, let's say Joe Biden passes away, or the Tara Reade scandal really does become unavoidably massive, and Biden is forced to resign, then hypothetically, Bernie would be in first place. Now, the question would be, like, if it happens tomorrow, does Bernie have enough time on all the remaining ballots to rack up all the delegates he needs to go to the convention with a majority and win it? But if they go to the convention and Biden drops out, then Bernie likely doesn't have enough delegates to win on the first ballot. And then on the second ballot, Biden's delegates can go wherever they want. And I would imagine the Democrats would try to hand the nomination off to somebody else, whether it's Cuomo or whether it's anybody else. I'm not sure, but I would think that it would be very hard to get it for Bernie. Then again, the voters might not want that, and there might be a sense that Bernie was clearly the second choice and he should get the nomination. So we'll have to see what happens. Matt Lipton, would you ever consider streaming some Kaiserreich? I'm sure if there's anyone who could figure out how to get the metagame it to give us Prime Minister Tommy Douglas, it's you. LOL. I haven't played Kaiserreich. That's a Victoria 2 mod. I don't know if I've played that mod in particular. I have been able to get Canada to elect a socialist government playing Victoria 2. In terms of game streaming, it is something I've always wanted to do, and I did a little bit of it. The challenge is, like, it's outside of my channel niche, and I feel like I should start another channel before I stream video games. Like, if I ever did a video game channel. I think another issue right now is with my son home. I barely have enough time to do the videos I do right now because I don't, like, Briahna has a job that's much less flexible than my work. So she does a pretty traditional 9-to-5 day, and that leaves me watching my son for most of that time. So I don't have, like, extra time right now to do anything else but make the couple videos I do a day right now. And so that's something that we have to consider as well. Maybe after the daycares reopen, I'll have more consistent time during the day to do my recordings and to do all that stuff and then really get into it. But I would like to maybe do that. I've always thought about, what do I do with content? Because, I would like to make content that's broader than pure electoral politics. But I also wonder, the audience I've built on this channel is here primarily for me to talk about pure electoral politics. And I wonder if I start a second channel or if I mix in some of that content here. Does that confuse the audience? Does it confuse the YouTube algorithm? These are all things I'm considering. Some people have been able to build variety channels, but then other people have clearly, created 2 or 3 channels to fit the various audience and content niches that they try to serve. Yeah, I mean, so Matt, like, when you say, like, I'm not suggesting there wouldn't be Pirate Party MPs. I'm just saying that there's when you look at the political parties that exist right now and the support they get right now, you have to think that like, besides the PPC, the only, like, there's no other party that's anywhere close to getting 5%. Like, the PPC and the Greens are, like, the other 2 small parties that could, with a little bit more support, pick up more seats. But like whether it's the communists or whether it's the Pirate Party or whether it's the Christian Heritage Party or the Libertarians, these parties just aren't anywhere close to 5% yet. And the game changes when you have proportional representation, because now voters aren't imprisoned to their strategic choice, and now like that circle of defeatism. It's like, I don't vote for the Pirate Party because they never win, and because no one ever votes for them, they never win, right? If you could say to people, look, it's proportional representation, you can vote for the People's Party. Let's get to 5%, and that way we can get things done. One challenge, though, is that under proportionality, one of the principles that's great is that there's no wasted votes. But the problem with that is that there will be wasted votes if you vote for a very small party and they don't hit 5%. Because then they don't get any seats, right? So if you can't get the People's Party to say, or the Pirate Party to 5% in some provinces where there's enough seats to divide that 5% is big enough to get a seat. So let's say if you get to 5% in Ontario and there's 105 seats in Ontario or something, I forget how many. But like if you do that, then like you'll get like 5 seats. Because that's the proportionality. But so people might still be reluctant to vote for very small parties. Whereas if you currently vote Liberal, you could be supremely confident that moving to the NDP or Greens, you'll stay above 5 because those parties are poll above 5 and will almost certainly do better under proportionality. So it'll be beneficial to the NDP, to the PPC, and to the Greens, but I don't know about really, really small parties. Yeah. Lovely Pariah is noting that a lot of landlords are trying everything they can to, if they can't evict tenants, they're trying to make their lives hell. Landlords, like, I don't want to, not every single landlord, but the landlord organizations we have in Canada, a lot of them are just the worst. Like, I know that they don't represent every single, individual landlord, but like, my God, they're bad. They're bad. Like, if you read some of their Facebook groups, they're like, maybe we could take people's windows out. Maybe we could take their door off the hinges. And so I'm sure that's illegal, but like the point is they're trying to get around the eviction ban. Oh, Kaiserreich is Hearts of Iron 4, but I got to remember note that Canada. Yeah, I haven't played Hearts of Iron as much. I've played one game. If I do stream a game when Crusader King 3 comes out, that would be a really fun game to stream. I think I'd probably play as Byzantium, as the Byzantine Empire, as Eastern Rome. That does fit my Greek heritage. Yeah, see, like Doug says, like different persona. See, I don't know if I would be a different person per se. Like, I don't think I would become like a traditional gamer bro, if you will. But I do think it is different content, and so that's something to consider. Then again, I could make... I sometimes think that I could do commentary videos like I do, but that aren't strictly about, say, elections. I could talk about, social issues and cultural issues, but keeping the same, me talking into the camera, quick videos, not a whole lot of fancy editing, to the point, often under 10 minutes or slightly above. Versus like making like a 40-minute like mini documentary like H Bomber Guy, who I'm a huge fan of. It's not the type of channel I've built. Vaudry makes a great point here where she says you could spread yourself thin with multiple channels. That's very true. So these are all things I have to consider. Adam asks us if I've ever thought putting your stream audio on Spotify like Sam Cedar does with the Majority Report. I've thought about it, but I always wonder if my streams are... I focus so much on question and answer, I don't know if that translates as well to people that weren't there. And so that's one of my concerns. I think if I did live streams, like say David Dole's, where it's like he does like clips for his show, because that's what David does. He's smart about it. He on a Friday afternoon he'll do some clips, and then he'll segment them out for videos throughout the weekend, and then he'll take all of his super chats at the end and read them all out and answer those questions. And I think that's like a good way of doing it. That's not how I've currently structured my stream, though. Yeah, there's lots of cool stuff you can do in Crusader Kings. Yeah. One time my guy became a like spawn of Satan, and all the children he was birthing became like spawns of Satan as well. And then there was the thing where like in the game you can get like, there's people who don't play Crusader Kings are going to be like, what the hell kind of game is this? But in the game you can like get illnesses, and then you can get them cured, but like the doctor will do like really crazy things to cure you. And in this particular instance, my guy got castrated. And so I was like, oh, well, that kind of like is good because then I won't have these like problematic children. But then the game has a special thing where because Satan has possessed your person, he regrows your ability to procreate, which of course, so the game peppers in these like medieval, it's a historical game, but they add fantasy elements to it, which are pretty cool. Thoughts on Stellaris? I haven't played enough of it. I played a little bit of it before, but I haven't really given it as much time as I really need to really make a judgment on it. It's a game that I have to go back to and maybe play with some of the expansions and see if it's really good. HS says, can you say more about how those making the harm reduction argument can avoid shaming their audience? Arguing that we should vote Biden to prevent Trump's harm isn't shaming. Isn't it self-shaming? Is it? No. HS, I would agree, or I would say that if your argument is that I am voting for Biden or the Democratic nominee or whatever because I feel it's the best option to defeat Donald Trump, and because even on the slightest of things will get better or at least get less bad, that's fine. I think talking to people about your rationale is fine. My point is that it devolves when you start to suggest that everybody who doesn't vote for Biden is a Trump voter. Because one, I think that's putting people on the defensive in an unfair way. And to be clear, the logical inference doesn't necessarily make sense. Because if you're not voting for Biden, you're a Trump voter. But if you're not voting for Trump, are you a Biden voter? Right? Like, you get what I'm saying? So I don't think it makes sense. I think if you want to convince people, maybe pick 3 or 4 policies, 3 or 4 differences. Don't oversell the differences. Don't sell Biden as this legendary progressive. But say, hey, Biden would support these 1 or 2 or 3 things. Talk about the things that the majority of the policies that even Nancy Pelosi's House of Representatives have passed that Republicans wouldn't pass in the Senate, and say those differences do matter to some degree. Like, I'm not like necessarily picking sides here myself, but I'm just offering advice, right? I think like pitch it in that sense. And when you're making the harm reduction argument, like I think that's the way to do it. You want to respect people's choice, but just try to offer your opinion on it. Never fundamentally question someone, like that, someone fundamentally based on that, especially if they're not actually voting for Trump. There are people who will not vote for Biden and have perfectly respectable reasons to do that. Doesn't mean you can't make your case, but it doesn't mean that they have to agree. Vaudry says, housing in Winnipeg renovations, removed outside walls, removed roof. It rained at 3 a.m. for multiple days. They replaced the inside walls, not the insulation, put windows in, not attached. Yeah, see, those are things. I don't know if that's legal, Vaudry. I don't know. I'm guessing it's borderline at best, but that's what landlords will do sometimes. Yes, Matt Lipton says that the Aztecs do invade from the west. It's one of the expansions. Where much like the Mongols, the Mongols will usually in almost every game, they'll usually, start to invade westward in the 1200s. But in the 1300s, I believe, if you have that expansion installed, an equivalent sized army will invade either Western Africa, Iberia, France, England, Ireland, from the Atlantic, which is very interesting. I don't normally use it because I feel like, especially if I play a longer game, that I play as Byzantium, and if you know what you're doing with Eastern Rome, the game's pretty easy, and so the Aztec one just makes the game easier for me because it weakens the western parts of of Europe, whereas it doesn't really affect the Greek and Italian and North African holdings I take. So I feel like if anything, it would make the game easier for me, unless I played as like a British Isles country or something. Jed is like, this is why I play with fantasy rules off. Lovely Parai says, I like David work a lot. Great venting outlet, Canadian style. Yeah, David's great. Yeah, no, for sure, Lovely, that like we have different approaches. One challenge though is that David has a bigger following than I do. His channel, like I have about 24,000 subs now, and he has over 250,000. And so because of that, when he has a live stream, he has, sometimes a couple thousand people there. He can't physically do what I'm doing. It's already hard enough for me to go question by question. It's impossible for him. So it's like, what's possible with the different channel sizes? Like I would have to do a stream more like his, or only read super chats if I had a very big stream. So it's one of the advantages of having a small channel or a smaller channel. Justin asks, a longtime channel viewer, channel member, as a U of T student who worked last summer, should I apply for the CERB and hope for the best or wait and see if programs aimed at students will be unveiled? Right now, there are some programs for students. Now, they're woefully inefficient. There's the Canada Jobs Benefit, which a Canada Summer Job thing, which will cover the full proportion of your wages at that job. So the employer won't have to pay as much. So there might be some extra jobs available for students. That's stupid. Students should get the CERB, but it's an option. Right now, if you worked last summer, but you weren't working when this came down, you likely don't qualify. Now, I've heard different things. Some people are saying in the comments, apply anyway. I've seen Liberal MPs say, apply anyway. But you should keep in mind that the document is very clear that you may have to pay the money back if you're not eligible. And I think that's why I would say, if you don't think you're eligible, maybe give the CRA a call, give the CERB people a call and confirm, because I don't want you getting in trouble because they will send you the money. They're not asking questions now, but you might end up in a situation where you have to pay the money back, and I don't want you to be in that situation. So basically, they've expanded it, but not enough to include students yet. But basically, the rules as of today were you had to have been lost your job directly because of COVID. Like you had to have lost your job after a certain date. And you had to have gone to exactly $0 income. If you make even $1, you are not eligible. And you had to have made at least $5,000 of income in the 12 months prior to you being laid off. So if even one of those does not apply, then you are not eligible. Yeah, like he's saying that he might do something more for students, but I'm skeptical. I have played Civ. Civ's really good. We were talking more Paradox Plaza games. I didn't know that, Matt. Matt says the CBC is offering funding to writers who have lost work because of COVID. I didn't know that. That's very interesting. I'm not sure what the parameters are there. It's been really tricky for gig economy workers. The new announcement does actually help them. That's the NDP's work. Because if you you're a freelancer, like you're an artist or whatever, and you make like 60, 70 grand a year, and like you're still getting work, but you're only getting like a few projects a month now. You haven't lost all your income, but you've lost most of it. It puts you in this situation where you don't have the ability to survive, but you're still making an income. It includes some of those people now. Yeah, I'm not sure. I know the changes were announced today, Vaudre, even though they are not sufficient. They are there, but I'm not exactly sure when they will be implemented. I don't know if it's going to take a day or two, but there's going to be some time there. Joseph says, did Joe Biden do interviews today? I'm wondering how his public appearances will stack up now that Bernie's out. I'm not sure if he did any today. Yeah, I'm not sure if he did any today. I didn't see any like major gaffe fest. So if he did some, they were uneventful. And frankly, that's a step up from where they were last week and the week before. Yeah, Justin, don't worry about it, friend. I mean, I think, like, look, if you listen to Adam Vaughn on Twitter, he'll tell you to apply. And that's a Liberal MP, but I think he's wrong. I want people to be safe and protect themselves and not get I don't think the government is going after people on a criminal side. I don't think, like, they're going to throw the book at somebody, but they will probably demand the money back if you were ineligible. And, like, you'll, and a lot of people won't be able to find $2,000 cash to pay the government back if they owe them, say, a few months from now. Yeah, they've definitely expanded it, Lovely Pariah, and probably starting next week, but it still doesn't include people that were made unemployed before a certain date. There are deep limitations still, but it is better. It is better, but of all the people that were left out, it didn't help more than half of them. So it's an improvement, but we still have a long way to go. Aspie for Peace says, do you think ODSP and OW would take advantage of the benefits or need more funding? I think personally, this is clearly shown that ODSP, Ontario Works, all these support programs from the various provinces are woefully inadequate, and that we should maybe move to make them get them as close to what the CERB is as possible. Because if this is what it takes people to survive, then we damn well know that people on disability or on Ontario Works or what have you have been surviving off half of that or less for years now. Unacceptable. So guys, I'm probably going to be wrapping up. It's about 11 here. Normally we go to about 10:30, but this was just really great. Nice casual chat. I think it was fantastic. So a few things. One, before I go, thank you for being here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for all your support, all your great questions and comments and jokes. And it was a really fun stream. Thank you for supporting the channel. If you aren't a subscriber, I think pretty much all of you are, but if you're not, click the subscription button. If you haven't yet, please click the little bell next to the subscribe button, because if you click that bell, whenever I post a video, you should get a notification either on your phone or email, and that would mean that you'd be one of the first people to see my videos. And it's a good reminder that I've posted a video, because otherwise it could get lost in your subscription feed. And so early views for a video really help the channel because it promotes it. For those who want to support the channel on an ongoing basis, you can become a member of the channel or support the channel on Patreon. But the biggest thing you can do is stop by, watch the videos. If you guys watch the videos I put up every day, that'll help the channel grow and reach more people. So guys, this was great. As always, I do these every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. Sometimes I do other streams if there's big events. Given that the primaries are done, I can't see the next event I'll do it for. Certainly when we get to the general election, I'm going to be doing streams for the conventions and the debates and things like that. But if I ever do a bonus stream for whatever reason, I'll try to give you guys as much notice as possible. Have a good one, guys, and I will see you next week, and I'll have at least 1 or 2 videos up tomorrow.